case that's something my thumbnails do. But anyway, that's a whole other question. Really important stuff in this video that I thought was really helpful, and I want to talk about it in conjunction with a couple of other things. So let's just get going into it.
Overall direction is downward. Now let's go into the data a little bit deeper, because at first this makes it sound like Protestantism is doing worse than Catholicism, but that's not the case. I'm going to pick a few specific religions and denominations covered in the report to show how Catholics especially have been losing ground in the past decade. So among the survey's 35,000 respondents, here are the results. 46% were raised Protestant, 30.2% were raised Catholic, 0.8% were raised Orthodox, 2.1% were raised LDS or Mormon, and 12.6% were raised without any religion.
Now again, when we talk about this stuff, we often mention that the perceptions we get by sort of looking at our friend group on YouTube or in the corner makes us think that, Orthodox churches are just completely covering the country. But again, as speaking with many people in Orthodoxy, people who are in the corner, becoming Orthodox, it's a tiny little group compared to the massive thing that is Catholicism historically, and then Protestantism in America, which is massive.
But of that same group today, only 40% identifies Protestant, 18.9% identifies Catholic, 0.7% identifies Orthodox, 1.5% identifies Mormon, and 29.4% identifies religiously unaffiliated. This means that the biggest gain of adherents were for those who have no religion at all. 20% of people in the sample went from being religious to having no religion. Of those who switched between religious groups, 7.6% became Protestant, 1.5% became Catholic, 0.3% became Orthodox, and 0.4% became...
Now, I think most of the people participating in the kinds of conversations we're participating in this little corner of the internet are not normal people. We are not normal. Most normal people do not watch the kinds of videos we watch. Most normal people do not obsess about the kinds of things we obsess about. We are way more like Christianity on the spectrum than normies, myself included. That's the way it is. I know that because I'm a pastor of a local church, and almost everybody at my local church, with the possible exception of those who have come because I started doing this YouTube thing, are normal people. And they never will watch the kinds of things I talk about on YouTube. When I try to talk about the kinds of things I talk about on YouTube, boy, I have to work hard to couch it in a certain language, come up really gently. I can get away.
Hello. There's a bunch of people watching. I don't know if any of them are gonna jump on. I just feel like we haven't been having the discussions that we used to have. Was trying to listen to Homeroom. I haven't been listening to Paul as much, but I mean, the Pope passed away. That's a big deal. The whole hullabaloo with Douglas Murray is happening, and I don't see much discussion or actually Nate from Grail Country is the only one I've been seeing really get involved on Twitter about it. Anyway, I was sitting here probably going to just listen to Paul's thing if nobody wants to jump on and discuss things. Yes, the sede vacante. Well, Father Eric is gonna I'm guessing, well, no, this is the thing after the Monday, so he's not doing his thing today. I don't know. It would be nice if some of the thinkers would jump on. Talk about Cardinal Pizzaballa. I'm just going to listen to Paul.
With it I can get away with it at estuary meetings often, but I really have to think hard about kind of putting it into a normal frame. And you can see that in my sermons. There was no rough draft for, I'll put this in no ads on Friday. It'll come out on Monday. There's no rough draft for Sunday this Friday because my sermon is just not that far along yet. and it's not that far along because of my wife's schedule as a school teacher and my schedule as a minister. We very seldom get time together during the year when she's not available, and this week we got some time, so we took it. But that means very compressed sermon thing, so I almost never work on Saturday. I had Monday through Thursday off, so I will work on Saturday. But Protestantism. Oh, let me mention this other book that I was reading on. Yeah, depending on whether you're no wait, no ads, you will have seen the video that I released tomorrow morning in place of no Rough Draft for Sunday. So as I mentioned on the other video, my wife and I made reservations to stay in a hotel in Death Valley, and the Southern California Edison turned off all the power to Death Valley for one day during the day, so there was no internet, which meant that my wife and I got to spend a lovely day by the pool. There was hardly anybody there, because who goes to a hotel that doesn't have air conditioning in Death Valley or any other services because the air conditioning's off? Now, my wife and I are used to it because we used to live in the Dominican Republic. Power went out all the time, and we lived just fine with it. But I had a device that I had Kindle books on, and I had a very limited number of Kindle books on it, just depending on when I bought books and how I used that device, yada, yada, yada. But I had this book on it, The Divine Economy by Paul Seabright, which I really enjoyed reading it this weekend, and there was a ton of stuff in it. It isn't about Christianity, it's about economics and religion, and it's a fascinating book. He made tons of fascinating observations that really got my juices going, and it absolutely nothing to do with it, because there was at a hotel in the middle of Death Valley with no electricity and no Wi-Fi. So hey, it was great, it was wonderful, but I didn't make videos, so now I got a bunch of stuff just eating at me. And let's keep going with this video.
Mormon. But we have to balance this against the people who left each of these groups as well. For example, 3.5% of people stopped being non-religious, but that's still a huge net gain for the non-religious. In my previous episode on the death of New Atheism.
Now, I forget. I was a Substack that I was reading, and he was talking about sort of, some of these gains, some of the trad cats and the Orthodox. I mean, the gains that are happening in these areas, they might be cultural significant. Aaron Wren keeps pointing out the cultural significance of certain very high status people have come to Roman Catholicism. And Roman Catholicism has been particularly adept at attracting certain very high status people to Roman Catholicism, like J.D. Vance, for example. And there's a few of them out there. But numerically, it's not even a rounding error. Just the number of people leaving Catholicism. And the Substack that I read, and I did some talking about it in one of my videos, basically, when you look at
brain drain is important. Brain drain is very important. I do see I don't think Protestantism works multi-generationally. And as we become less frontier, as our civilization becomes more enmeshed, where it's just not going to work.
Enormous decline of the main line, the enormous decline of Catholicism, and declines in Protestantism. Protestants tend to win more than other people in that, besides the religiously non-participatory, let's call them that, because this is a group that we will keep talking about. But Protestantism is so adept, and it's so responsive. One of the things that Paul Seabright talked about in his book is just how adept Christianity and Islam were and are at picking up people. So much more adept than many, many other religions. Now, again, you might look at, let's say, California Buddhism. And when I say California Buddhism,
most religions don't look like, this is the thing. Most religions don't even allow conversion. Like, Hinduism doesn't have conversion. Buddhism, Mick Buddhism might have conversion, but real Buddhism doesn't have conversion, as far as I understand it. The idea of conversion is Hebrew in origin. That's what the word Hebrew means in a very real sense. It means to cross over, right? And from the Jewish idea of allowing conversion, Islam and Christianity developed a desire, hunger for conversion, which, as long as you're looking into a pagan world, right, that's possible. But a Christian civilization or a Muslim civilization is impossible, because how can you be a missionary within a Christian civilization? How can you be missionary within a completely Christian or completely Muslim society. You can't, right? And this is what I mean when I say, like, Islam and Christianity has code that cannot be part of the true final religion that will, in fact, rule when the Messiah comes.
I don't mean that geographically. I mean that in terms of style. The kinds of Buddhists that are like, yeah, I think Buddhism is so cool. I'd like to, I'd like to reduce my attachments, but then they want to get rich, and it's like, I don't think that's supposed.
I think he means frontier, and yes, I agree with that very much so. There are a bunch of people listening. Why you're listening to me listen to Paul at 1.5 speed? No idea.
But supposed to work that way. It's sort of like Buddhism as fashion statement or trend. And I don't want to be too hard, because I think some of those people look at Mark D. Parker in the corner. What an addition to the corner Mark D. Parker was. What an interesting life story. What a wealth of experience and wisdom he brings to our group, just in terms of when he talks about his life and how he struggled with his bipolar, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I wrote a piece on Voices today. One individual who often writes about basically the deconstruction of a daughter. I'll say it that way. And I said, this to me is more than all these other issues that tend to get our attraction in the Christian Reformed Church. This is the real issue. This issue of people walking away from the church and what that means for their life and what to do about that. And again, as this other Substack said, we've got right now nothing. None of the churches have anything on offer that's seriously making an impact in the numbers of people walking away.
Imagine making $453,000 in a single month as an affiliate marketer without.
Well, I mean, that's part of the frontier nature of not being multi-generational, not being civilizational. Hello, Orthodox Boomer Grandma. Been waiting forever for you to come on my channel. You're welcome anytime you would like. See also Jesus criticizing proselytizers for making children of hell. Well, there's that too. Laura Pax Vabiscum. I have no idea what that means. I'm guessing it has something to do with the passing of the Pope. Peace be with you. Okay. I'm not aware that has anything to do with the passing of the Pope, but I would if you were, passing. Well, now you tell me. I would be interested in your thoughts about the conclave. I am in bad shape right now. Thank you, though. Well, may God grant you good shape. And you are welcome. What was I saying? I was saying Kale Zeldin did a brief video. I would actually love to talk to Kale about it as well. Like I said on Twitter, my hope is, well, if I got to choose the Pope after Father Eric, my next choice would be Cardinal Pizzaballa. I for several reasons, I think he might be a good choice, and he's nice and young, and listening to him speak in Hebrew, at least, I was impressed, and I liked the fact that he was translating Catholic ideas into Hebrew words and Hebrew concepts. So obviously I am a Judaizing Pharisee, and that would be fun. As soon as Francis came out on balcony, I researched and converted to Eastern Orthodox within a few months. Oh my God. Really, really. I was very impressed with his return to simplicity, his return to whatchamacallit. Do you think this is the generation for young popes? I think always is the generation for young popes. Especially the way we work now, I think Benedict was really, really, really. The one thing I respected him the most for was his willingness to retire and be Pope Emeritus. I had a bad shiver go up my spine. I had liked Benedict and had 6 audiences with him in 2012. Okay. Wow, 6 audiences. That's a lot of audiences with the Pope. I didn't think audiences were. Was he Pope already at 2012? Yeah, he was. Yeah. That wasn't after he. When was Benedict Pope? He was Pope from 2015 to 2013. I like the idea of something like a mandatory retirement age of 80, including for rabbis. Although that would be much harder to enforce. It's not a normal Jewish thing. We have our the hierarchy is too informal for that. But I like the idea of like, okay, go ahead and retire and be this reinforcing this assistant bulwark, right? That is keeping the institution healthy as long as you are capable of doing so from a position of service as an emeritus pope or whatever. And I wish people were doing that as professors. Frankly, I think once you hit the age of 80, it is appropriate for you to take a senior position. And that doesn't mean you have to stop being involved and being available to the people who may need your expertise and your experience and your wisdom. It means being willing to sit in the navigator seat instead of in the driver's seat. That's I would love to see something like that. Yeah, pizza balla. That's what I was thinking. It was group audience. Right. Okay. Yeah. I knew he was alive. Yeah. Retiring is a thing. The Vatican and everyone that goes on there is the WD of Catholicism. Well, shows are needing. I've been hearing about Cardinal Sarah from I believe Nigeria. I believe he's from sub-Saharan Africa, and there's a Filipino cardinal who might be. I mean, now all the cardinals are actually looking at each other. There are how many voting cardinals? I mean, I did some of this questioning with Grok a while ago, but here. Please list all cardinals eligible to vote in the upcoming conclave in order of age from youngest to oldest with current position, such as current position. Yeah, with current position. Yeah. I think that'll do it. Okay, let's see what Grok gets us. I believe it. I saw something say there's 133, so that's a lot of them. And I've seen Pizza Balla's name brought up. If they wanted to send a message, they could have made Desmond Tutu Pope. You realize Desmond Tutu was Anglican. He wasn't Catholic, right? Yeah, he's not a Catholic. Sorry, that doesn't work. Well, wasn't that what they what the message they sent with Francis? You don't have to be Catholic to be the Pope. That's the impression I got. There are like 20 of you listening and not participating. Yes, there is an age limit of 80 to vote. Correct. Let's see if Grok has come up with my list yet. I'm actually kind of impressed with how much better Grok is than whatchamacallit. Christian Baxter, if you're watching, you're supposed to be jumping on. Nathan Woods, if you're watching, you should be jumping on. So apparently the youngest cardinal was born in 1980. He's younger than I am. Wow. Mikola Bajczuk. Who is Mikola Bajczuk? That makes me feel whatchamacallit. Mikola Bajczuk is a Ukrainian Greek Catholic prelate who has served as Eparch of St. Peter and Paul of Melbourne since 2020. He was just made cardinal in December 7th of 2024. He's the youngest member, and he is a member of the Redemptorists. It's a religious congregation. Who jumped on? Yay! Once her devices connect, we may have one of my favorite people on, Laura.
Hello.
How are things in the land of cheese?
Oh, they're pretty good. Thank you very much.
How have you been doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. I just thought maybe you'd like to have a Catholic to bounce things off of, although I can't stay for very long, so I should be handling dinner things.
I would love to have a Catholic to bounce things off of. My first question, do I offer like Catholics condolences or?
You could, sure, yeah. Yeah, that would make sense. Oh, sorry to hear about Pope Francis. Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be
like,
good manner.
I don't know what the proper thing is to say to a Catholic upon the passing of the Pope.
Yeah, like I don't think most people would particularly expect you to say anything, but if you offered condolences, there'd be nothing wrong with that.
But isn't he like the sign of unity in the church, and like everybody's
Yeah.
supposed to pray for him
Sure.
that
Yeah.
he not be as idiotic as he usually is.
No comment on that, but yeah, no, it's just like, you can offer people condolences or not. There's nothing wrong with offering them condolences. That's
Okay.
basically all I'm saying. Yeah.
But I get the impression that it's a weird thing to like. It's not something that people generally do.
I don't think it's weird.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't necessarily be expected, right? As in, like, if you and I bumped into each other at Starbucks or something today, and you chatted with me a little bit, but you didn't tell me you were sorry to hear the Pope died. When you went away, I wouldn't be like, I can't believe that guy didn't offer me condolences on the Pope.
Well, yeah, I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
It's not that type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, but it'd be fine to say so.
that's what I posted. I posted, "Blessed is the true judge." That's what when we hear someone passed, that's our normal response is, "Blessed is the true judge."
Huh.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
It is it is a Jewish custom that goes back at least 1800 years
Mm-hmm.
that we can definitely verify.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But okay, so that was my first question. My second question: are there people who are actually like celebrating?
Oh, maybe a few.
Uh-huh.
My impression here on the ground, just like knowing a lot of Catholics in real life, is that most people like Pope Francis a lot and
Mhm.
have generally warm feelings towards him. Most Catholics do.
Okay.
There are some people, and then there are some people who are vaguely dissatisfied with him, and some people who really, really hate him. Maybe those people are popping open champagne today, but I don't think I know any of them personally.
I mean, I found myself defending him to people that that are. I mean, I tend to get along with trad cats. Obviously, not the anti-Semitic trad cats, but like
Right.
the, the faithful Catholics,
Uh-huh.
right? And who were oftentimes not happy with the types of things that Francis did, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that at least some of them are really hoping against hope. I mean, didn't Francis appoint like 80% of the current conclave?
I'm not sure actually.
Um, um, that's what I heard, and he was more aggressive, from what I heard, and you might know better. More aggressive in actually enforcing hierarchy, enforcing himself upon the cardinals, like marginalizing people he didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
Then a lot of people have been claiming that, at least. I don't know if it's true.
Yes, I think there is something to that. Yes. Uh-huh. I don't have any examples at my fingertips, but yeah. So what was I gonna say? Oh, okay. One interesting thing I have heard is that he did appoint a lot of new cardinals, and a lot of them don't know each other because maybe they haven't all been in Rome together yet. Some of
Mm.
them. And so some people were thinking that for that reason, this conclave might take a little longer than usual because people haven't necessarily been meeting together and scheming about what they're going to do during the next conclave. So, no, anything could happen. I'm not going to make any predictions because they're usually wrong.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't make predictions either. But this is the list that Grok made for me. And he says it seems that there are 135 cardinals under 80 years old as of April 21st, 2025, eligible to vote. The youngest, Mikola Bajcik, February 13th, 1980. So he's 45.
Mm-hmm.
And the oldest one was, I'm guessing, 79 or something. And yeah, I mean, I guess I could pull up a list of what do they call it? Papibile?
Papabile.
Papabile.
Yeah, popeable.
Yeah, papabile. And like, do you have any names that have been brought up?
Well, there are. You mentioned Cardinal Sarah. A lot of people like him. He is already 79, I think.
Is he? Okay,
I think
Cardinal
so.
Sarah.
I don't know. I don't know who else people like. One reason maybe someone else should hop on here to take my place if anybody wants to. Is
Yeah,
that
he's 79. That's pretty old.
I'm not really up on the gossip because actually I try not to be these days. I was an avid follower of Vatican gossip when I was like college age. And honestly for the 10 years after that probably. But I decided that was not good for me. So I often don't look at Catholic news.
Yeah, I mean, so Father Eric, I was a little surprised about how openly he jokes about a campaign for him to become Pope. And then I realized it is such a sarcastic thing to him that it's like it's just plain funny to even talk about it, which already told me something about the whole idea.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you need to go and do family things?
I think I do. I think I need to feed people. So try and get yourself another Catholic.
I will definitely try to get myself another Catholic.
Okay.
Fishing for Catholics is a difficult thing to do.
All right. Well, good luck. Have
Bye,
a nice
Laura.
rest of your evening.
Thank you for joining. Yes, Laura is one of our favorites here. What did the people say? God will pick the right pope. See, I definitely agree with that. I believe that. Yes. I wonder if my my trad Catholic friends were not his biggest fans, but certainly would never rejoice at his passing. They will be praying for him. Yeah, that's. I think faithful people tend to be faithful people and like generally good people. Yeah, I certainly didn't get the impression some people were like, yeah. 10 on the short list, including Pier Battista Pizzaballa. The Chad for Pope campaign. Chad isn't Catholic. Okay, there are 20 people watching. You lurkers, you. I guess I could go back to watching Paul Vanderklay. We could go through a list of the papabile, however you say that. Pope candidates. Let's see. Do I trust New York Times enough to actually go through their list of possible popes? Let's pretend we trust the New York Times, even though we really shouldn't. Here are some possible contenders. So, I mean, out of 135, I mean, if I were one of the 135, I would be like, definitely got to be somebody less than 70. But that's me. Wow. his very first contender on the New York Times list for you, Chezi, Pier Battista Pizzaballa, and people love saying that name. 60, an Italian who is the Vatican's top official in Middle East affairs, is considered a possible frontrunner. Although he became a cardinal only in 2023, his experience in one of the world's most heated conflict zones helped him rise to prominence. The fact is, if that's your thought, why would you not be picking a Ukrainian or Russian? I mean, if I were a cardinal, my biggest concern would be an attempt at reunification with the Eastern Orthodox. That just seems to me like it should be the priority, like it would be my priority as a Catholic. Cardinal Pizzaballa would be the first Italian pope since John Paul I in 1978. But experts say he is also considered an international figure and removed from Vatican politics, having spent much of his career in Jerusalem. He has also generally steered clear of polemics about doctrine, which experts say could help him secure the necessary 2/3 majority in the College of Cardinals, although some think he may be considered too young for the role. Okay. Cardinal Pietro Parolin, I hope I'm saying that right, 70, has been Pope Francis's second in command since 2013, when Francis made him Secretary of State. In that role, the cardinal is in charge of overseeing internal church affairs and guiding foreign policy. A soft-spoken Italian and mild-mannered centrist, Cardinal Parolin is deeply familiar with the Curia, the church's central administration, as well as of the Vatican's vast international network, having served for over 20 years as a diplomat and undersecretary at the Vatican-based body that oversees its international relations. Fluent in English, French, Italian, and Spanish. Seems good. He has spoken at international conferences on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I'm guessing saying things I would not be happy with. Climate change. I'm guessing saying things I would not be happy with. And human trafficking. Possibly saying things I would not be happy with. He is also an expert on Asia. China is a big deal. And Vatican watchers consider him the mastermind of the progress the Vatican has made in recent years on building relations with China and Vietnam. Fridolin Ambongo. Cardinal Fridolin Ambongo, 65. Well, I mean, if Pizzaballa is too young at 60, I mean, they're not going much above. That's a 70 and this is 65. The Archbishop of Kinshasa, the capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo, has been considered a possible contender since Francis made him a cardinal in 2019. Pope Francis has long urged the Catholic Church to go to the peripheries, meaning communities in Africa and Asia, where the Church also is the most vibrant. One persistent question has been when the Church might reinforce the commitment by choosing a pope from Africa. Catholics make up about 18% of the population of the continent and generate more seminarians than any other part of the world. Pope Francis, an Argentine, was the first non-European to lead the Church since 741. I'm guessing somebody from Africa. Even so, Francis was from a family with Italian roots, yet there is a certain paradox involving in choosing any successor from Africa. While it would be a break from tradition, the Catholic hierarchy in Africa is among the most conservative. Cardinal Ambongo has been close to Pope Francis, one of the just 9 members of an advisory group known as the Council of Cardinals. But the cardinal led the opposition to Francis's 2023 ruling that the church should bless homosexual couples. Luis Antonio Tagle. I've heard a lot about this guy. It seems a lot of people think he might be favored. Even I wonder if the betting markets have started taking bets on the next pope. Luis Antonio Tagle, 67, a liberal-leaning cardinal from the Philippines, whom commentators have dubbed the Asian Francis, has for years been deemed a frontrunner to be pope. He was made a cardinal by Pope Benedict XVI in 2012. Well, that's going to do him well, especially he's pretty young, 67. I mean, that's not bad. And would be the first Asian pope, an ally of Francis. The often smiling Cardinal Tagle goes by the nickname Chito. Okay, Pope Chito. His highly personable approach is in line with Francis' attention to the poor and those in need in developing countries where he has lived and worked. He accompanied Francis or helped prepare for his trips to Asia, including a grueling 11-day tour of Southeast Asia and the Pacific in the summer of 2024. He also comes from a region of the world where Catholicism still plays a prominent role and where Francis paid particular attention in trying to build a church with a less Eurocentric future. Cardinal Tagle was widely considered one of the most promising candidates in the 2013 conclave, but seemed too young for the job at the time. Cardinal Tagle has dealt with some of the church's most divisive issues, like the inclusion of gay people and whether to give communion to divorced and remarried Catholics. He served as president of the church's International Gathering on the Family in 2014 and of a General Assembly on the same topic the following year, in which prelates agreed on a more inclusive approach by the church, although they remained opposed to same-sex marriage. Wow. Really? Okay. Matteo Zuppi. Cardinal Matteo Maria Zuppi of Italy. You know he comes from a very Catholic family when his middle name is Maria. 69. Stands out among the contenders who reflect Francis's view that the church should be representative of and support the poor. Francis promoted the progressive native of Bologna to the rank of cardinal in 2019 and assigned him several important missions. Some experts speculate that Francis would have likely favored him as his successor, although the Pope never weighed in publicly on the matter. Cardinal Zuppi is closely tied to Sant'Egidio, a Catholic community known for service to the poor and conflict resolution. Vatican watchers say the group became an increasingly important lobby under Francis, and experts suspect that the cardinal's closeness to the powerful community could help him obtain votes. But that link has also raised concerns that if elected pope, he would be overly influenced by the group. In 2015, Francis named him Archbishop of Bologna, one of the most important posts in Italy. There, Don Matteo, as he is known, continued to work with poor people and migrants. Welcoming migrants is a historic challenge for Europe, he has said. Christ invites us to not turn away. Oh, yeah. People are really going to love this. And in recent years, France has appointed Cardinal Zuppi to the key role of envoy for Ukraine matters. That is important. He has been welcoming to LGBT Catholics, writing the preface for the Italian edition of Reverend James Martin's 2017 book, Building a Bridge, which calls for the church to find new pastoral ways of ministering to gay people. Oi! If this guy takes it, and it looks like it is quite possible he might, I see an exodus of tradcasts from the Catholic Church. Peter Erdo, Cardinal Peter Erdo of Hungary, 72, an expert on canon law, is expected to be a frontrunner among cardinals who long for a return to the conservatism of Popes John Paul II and Benedict XVI. John Paul II named the cleric Archbishop of Esztergom Budapest in 2002, and the following year gave him a cardinal hat, making him at 50 the youngest cardinal at the time. Oh, he might not be bad. Cardinal Erdo is considered an astute diplomat. That's not good. That's not bad. Able to build bridges with Catholics in Latin America and Africa, and good at reaching out to other religious groups. We like hearing that. He has frequently attended Holocaust memorials. We like hearing that. And Jewish leaders say his support has been crucial at a time of the rise of the far right and growing anti-Semitism in Hungary. We like hearing that. He is known to many of his Western counterparts, having served from 2006 to 2016 as president of the Council of the Bishops' Conference of Europe. He has also written several books and speaks and understands English, French, German, Italian, Russian, and Spanish, giving him linguistic prowess to serve a global flock. I'm liking this guy. He has spoken out against allowing divorced Catholics to receive communion and against taking in migrants. Seems good to me. In a 2019 book-length interview with Robert Moynihan, the founder and editor of Inside Vatican magazine, book-length interview? Cardinal Erdo spoke of a need to guard the flame of traditional Christian faith in an increasingly secular world. Okay, I approve. He can be Pope. Anders Arborelius, Bishop Anders Arborelius of Stockholm, 75, who converted to Catholicism at age 20, is Sweden's first Catholic cardinal. Ooh, the Swedish will like that. Although Sweden was once predominantly Lutheran and is now largely secular, it is one of few European countries where the Roman Catholic Church has grown in recent years. Francis's elevation of the cardinal in 2017 was seen as another attempt to reach out to countries where Catholics represent a minority. In a recent interview, Cardinal Arborelius said the biggest challenges facing the church were building bridges in a pluralized world. Okay, that could be okay. Giving greater influence to women within the church. And helping families pass on the faith. That I agree with. He also warned of political currents potentially dividing the church. Okay, I mean, that can be a reasonable thing to say. It can be a danger in some parts of the church that you get divided on various issues, he said. We should not form parties within the Catholic Church. Okay. Cardinal Arborelius, a former Carmelite monk, has, like Francis, expressed support for migrants, but he voiced opposition to blessing same-sex couples. In 2006, he said that a decision by the Lutheran Swedish Church to allow such blessings would make dialogue between it and the Roman Catholic Church more difficult. Yeah, okay. And that is all of the people that the New York Times thinks could be candidates to be. Let's see what the betting markets are saying. Let's see who's actually making. I am not seeing any betting markets online betting guide. Let's see what online odds checkers. Let's see what odds checker is. Accessing from the United States, and can we find odds? There we go. Odds for Pope. Let me check the comments. What are people saying in the comments? Lots and lots of people saying things in the comments. I wish I was alive when they elected the first woman pope. That's definitely not going to happen in the future. It may have happened in the past. Do you have to be Catholic to be pope? I believe so. I think you have to at least pretend to be Catholic. Yeah, that's it. Shouldn't they be picking the cardinal from Africa? Isn't Catholicism booming there? Kind of, yeah. Don't know who specifically you meant. And Colonimus asked the same question I did. Well, I would be surprised if he was pro-human trafficking. You would... what do you exactly mean by pro-human trafficking? Like, he may be for migration, which can amount to the same thing. Honestly, not sure. However, I do think a pope that comes from a region where the religion is going strong and seems to be getting stronger would be something to look out for. Yeah, I would agree. I must say that it's impressive that the Catholics have been able to keep this selection process going so long. Yeah, I believe it's been like around 1,000 years or something. Why is the cardinal being young considered a bad thing? I think a lot of going into the conclave is we can compromise on an older pope in the hope that in the future things will change towards our liking. Whereas if you take a young pope, you are less likely to want to compromise. So that might be part of it. I mean, Francis was pope pretty long time. Yeah, I mean, I think the problem is with the conclave, like the younger the pope, the less willing people are to be like, okay, I'll go along with it. I like Erdo, yeah. Seems unlikely, to be honest. What exactly is blessing same-sex marriage? Yeah, it's I think they wanted to open the door for those priests who wanted to basically have ceremonies in their church for such things, and people were like, no. Yeah, going, we won't marry them, but we'll go, yeah, we are completely okay with this, and God blesses it. Basically a way to put gay marriage into the church without really doing it, yeah. Of course, that won't be abused at all. Yeah. Supposed to not be formal either, but I mean, the intention of advocating for it seems pretty clear, yeah. You mentioned that the Pope's top priority should be unified with the Orthodox. Why is that, and how would you think that would be achieved? I personally, I mean, if I were a Christian, I would take very seriously Jesus's prayer that the church should be one. I think the idea of an actual Catholic Church is really, really important to Christians in general, but specifically to Roman Catholics. Even more so. I mean, there's one thing that, like, the Eastern Orthodox refer to the Catholics as uniates, and to some extent, I do think they are uniates, and that's particularly like the position of Pope, as I understand it, is first and foremost to kind of unify the church. So it seems pretty important to me, and the most like the largest group. And look, before the Great Schism, the churches were like within communion with each other. Personally, it seems incredibly important to me that if I thought at all that it was possible for all the patriarchs to be in communion with each other, like, that seems important and great to me personally. But yeah. Wouldn't truly believing Catholics who are gay be against blessing same-sex unions? Colonimus, you would be very surprised with what the like. I think I have been very, very shocked with everything that I've learned with Catholics. Despite the fact that I grew up with Catholics, I learn new things about Catholicism constantly. Andrew says, if the OO and EO can't unite, we're all cooked. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the fact that the EO can't really unite themselves, like, I believe the Antiochians are like the only ones who are in communion with pretty much everyone, although even they're not in communion with everyone. But like, yeah, I mean, yeah, if they can solve the Great Schism, that would be great. It's the 1,000-year-old discussion that pretty much everyone has kind of given up on, or so it seems, at least. Christians are not very messianic. What can I say? Reunifying Christendom would be a good thing. I am all for unification. I am very much for unification. Okay, now let's look at the odds of the Pope. Okay, so next Pope odds. Pietro Parolin. I think we spoke about him. He is right now at 40%. Luis Antonio Tagle, he is at 40%. Was Parolin the guy I was like, no, please not? No, Zuppi was the one I was like, oh, God, no. Where's Parolin? Is Parolin not on this list? Like, it doesn't make sense to me that someone would be... There's Parolin. Parolin was the one who's been in second command. Yeah. Yeah. Guessing he has views I'm not huge fans of, but where were we? We were looking at... So Parolin and Tagle are the ones which are the big odds ones right now. Then Erdo at 9.1%. Peter Turkson. Was Turkson on this list? Where was Turkson? He's not even on this list. I guess we can go see who he is. And Angelo Scola. Again, I don't think he's on this list either. Let's see. Angelo. Nope. So let's see who Angelo Angelo Scola, Cardinal. We're gonna go with Wikipedia. Archbishop of Milan and Patriarch of Venice. How old is he? He is. How old is he? He is 83. Dude, can I bet against this guy? Like, no, that's not a thing. Why is he at 4.8%? That seems to be like good money to be like, no. This market has shifted away from Scola. Yeah, like that doesn't seem to be a real thing to me. Andrew, who let you on my channel?
Don't look at me. Also, my dog is.
You're
my
in
dog is
Irvine
fighting.
again? I thought you were going to be in Indiana.
Yeah, I just came back.
Aha. How's Indiana?
Good. The cousins hate me already.
Good job. Good job. Okay, your dog is asking for your. So let's see what these guys are saying. The most likely candidate to replace Pope Francis is Pietro Parolin at plus 150 odds. Parolin has been Secretary of State. He has strong diplomatic. There is now a dual favorite as of Monday afternoon, with Tagle rising up to plus 150 to tie with Parolin. Tagle is from the Philippines. The market has shifted away from Angelo Scola, obviously. Like, what are you talking about? Who now sits way back at plus 2,000. He was a favorite back in 2013. Yeah, 12 years ago when the Conclave met, but his age at this time may put him out of contention. He's 83 years old at this time. Yeah, like he can't even vote, right? But he will be participating. I think all of them actually get locked into the conclave, even if they're not allowed to vote. It appears likely the next pope will nudge the congregation back toward the center, a bit of a swing away from the heavily progressive views of the last decade. While Francis found success, they don't talk about the other guys. Who is this Peter Turkson guy? Peter Turkson. Peter Turkson. From Ghana. He is, how old is he? He's 76. Pretty old. I'm wondering why he has such a high ranking on here. Was he probably was part of the first conclave, the conclave that here, Papabile status following the announcement on 11 February 2013 of the planned resignation of Pope Benedict XVI. Turkson was identified by the media as a possible candidate for the papacy. Bookmakers made Turkson the favorite to be elected pope. So he was the most. If he was, he was a candidate back then. I guess that's why they're thinking of him as a candidate now. Let me see if I can find better odds makers than these guys. Let's see what Online Betting Guide says. Oh, here, I'll just read it. Cardinal Parolin is currently the front runner at 4-1, followed by Cardinal Tagle at 9-2. Peter Turkson at 6-1, and Peter Erdo at 7-1. And there's apparently they're taking odds on what name he will choose. Apparently Francis, so I guess Francis II would be a popular one. Don't know what to tell you. Online betting odds, yeah. Danielle Shalom, we need to make plans for. Why is that an actual hill? We need to make plans for when we're going to be learning. Vegas odds for sacred things. You didn't realize there are Vegas odds for who will be the next pope, and since when is who will be pope a sacred thing? Let's see what. Let me. What was I saying? What was I doing? I was doing that. And then I was going to look up Pope on Twitter. Babylon B. Catholic Church to consider electing a Pope who's Catholic this time. Some people are weird. I mean, people online seem to like Cardinal Sarah, but he wasn't on the New York Times list or on the betting odds.
What did I miss?
You didn't miss anything.
That's wild.
What did you think you would miss?
I don't know.
What are you eating now?
What am I eating?
Oh, you're not eating anything? You're always eating
I'm
something.
chewing gum. I'm chewing gum.
You're chewing gum. So what'd you do in Indiana?
I made portfolios. I had an interview, and I screwed around with the cousins.
You screwed around with the cousins.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. Why do the cousins hate you?
No, they just they got used to me long enough to start hitting me.
I see. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
It's called male bonding.
Yes, sir.
So what are you thinking about these days?
What am I thinking about these days?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the interviews get back to me in a couple of days, so we'll see how that turns out, and that will kind of be an indication of what happens next. So,
Okay.
yeah. How about you? What have you been thinking about besides the Pope?
I mean, did you listen to the whole Douglas Murray thing?
No. What's that all about?
So Douglas Murray went on Joe Rogan, and there was a slow burn of the discussion, and then it's kind of it's been blowing up. There are lines being kind of drawn within the podcastistan, as Konstantin Kisin talks about it. It's not really clear. Like, let me put it this way. I certainly don't have as much respect for Joe Rogan as I used to before, especially when the details started coming out of him not wanting to have Douglas Murray on without Dave Smith. Do you even know who Dave Smith is? So yeah, I personally was nonplussed by what was going on. But I mean, there's a lot of talk about it on Twitter.
What are the lines being drawn?
Well, yeah, like Jan God said, Brett Weinstein's take on the Murray interview. I think Brett made a huge mistake. I think he's absolutely wrong. I think Brett does not comprehend political science at all. So yeah, the alt media is simply the same disaster as the old media. Yeah. I do wonder what Michael Malice has to say, but look, these online libertarians, like, yeah, it's popular to be a libertarian on Twitter. Like, it's not popular to be a libertarian in the real world. And the more you're reflecting libertarian silliness in your beliefs and stuff, the more detached you are from real life. Yon God, so you agree it's all a nefarious plot to get us into a war with her? Yeah. That's, yeah. I have a joke I write. I don't trust homosexuals when it comes to geopolitics. That the comment can go a long way and it reaches the most meta of meta corners. Actually, I have started wondering if there isn't a, like, the people who seem to actually know what they're talking about usually don't have their own kids. And if they're heterosexual and they don't have their own kids, that's usually a much worse indication than if they're homosexual and don't have their own kids. Malice did a whole reaction video. Interesting. So no Murray or Fuentes. Well, Fuentes, I mean, does he pretend to be heterosexual? Here, let's ask Grok. Grok.
Bah. Sorry, I've been phasing in and out of this conversation.
We've noticed. It's Nick Fuentes, right?
Yeah.
Mm. Okay, quote, some people call me gay because I've never had a girlfriend. I think if anything, it makes me less gay. If anything, it makes me not gay.
Based.
Because having a girlfriend is gay.
Yeah. Nothing more manly than doing another man.
Apparently. So yeah. What are you doing?
Bending conduit.
What?
Bending conduit. Watch, I'll do this a little bit and then I'll show you.
You're bending conduit?
Mm-hmm.
What's conduit?
It's like metal pipe that you run wires through.
Aha. Why are you bending conduit?
So I can show electricians and claim to know stuff.
Aha. Yeah, I guess we are going back to ancient Greece.
I don't know, I guess that's lovely. You see that bend? I made that bend.
Good job.
Yes, sir.
So you're gonna take the conduit all the way back to Indiana with you?
No, I just take photos and make sheets and print them out, and that's what the portfolio looks like.
Aha. Did you talk to Antonio about this?
No. Well, I think I texted him, but didn't he not do electrical stuff?
He did not finish his internship, even though he started his internship.
Okay. I mean, I'll see what I sent him and maybe revive that chat. I should not be doing this short of conduit.
I wouldn't know. I have never been an electrician. Okay, I am going back to watching Paul Vanderplay.
It has to be really thought of carefully, because we're going to make kinds of changes in society that my grandparents couldn't fathom. And I think we're going to see kinds of categorical changes among people in terms of their participation, in terms of how they think. My grandparents, even my parents, couldn't fathom. We're not going to become like Europe in the United States. It's very interesting. In this book, I read so many different things out of different books. Europe hasn't had the same rise in the meaning crisis in deaths of despair. What are deaths of despair? Suicide, alcoholism, drug abuse. Those are deaths of despair. That's when something falls out of a person's life. I think Europe has, in some ways, a degree of Christianity that is built into the very infrastructure of the cities that is not there in the United States. And even if the people, this is something that I was really struck by my first trip to Europe. You can look at the interview I did for that Dutch podcast. It's almost like the stones cry out there, and the architecture and the art and the something in the culture suspends the people in a way that nihilism in American architecture and city design and economic and commercial and social life just doesn't afford. And I think that's part of the reason American religions, even religious imports that come to America, congregationalize. It's interesting. I was talking to Jacob on his live stream before I left for my trip, and he was talking to me about Shabbat, which is this group.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Okay. I was not expecting this. I was talking to him about what?
Of this group in Judaism that he where to describe Jacob's level of observance, because his level of observance and his level of passion. I don't know, Jacob. I won't talk about you. You can try and describe it yourself. You're a mystery.
I believe in Orthodox Judaism. I don't necessarily practice it. What's so weird here?
To me, man, you're a mystery, but I love you.
No, he means about
What tends to happen in America, I think, because you just don't have the embedded years of impact of religion that have shaped the city structures and the social structures and the network so much. You needed this level of congregational participatory religion in America that when that begins to fall out, people really start to hurt. And this is part of the reason I'm very interested in the deconstructed and what they do and how in America they don't sort of fall all the way down. I loved what it was Michael Schellenberger said at that.
These are Vessies. They also make these fantastic waterproof shoes. Not water resistant, or not water resistant.
Pragmatist, so I think Christianity works better. Christianity has better outcomes than the alternatives.
All of them?
No, most of them. I think that there's a small number of people that can handle atheism, and I know all of you.
And I think that's, in many ways, an American thing. I don't know that. I've watched a lot of people deconstruct. And I don't know that Shermer would be the atheist he is if he hadn't started out being a believing Christian. And I think that's true of a lot of people. And again, Rogan, this clip from that Glenn Scrivener's, or he and his outfit gleaned.
I know a lot of Christians, or hardcore Christians, who are some of the nicest people you'll ever meet in your life. So it does work. You're right. Like if you do live like a Christian and you do follow the principles of Christ, you will have a richer, more love-filled life.
And I think in some ways in America, it's harder to do that without a church than it is for many in Europe, where Christianity just was so pervasive in that culture for so long. Okay, back to Trent Horn.
I talked about how strident, militant forms of atheism are on the decline, but that doesn't preclude more generic worldviews, like the kind that believes in God but not organized religion, from increasing. When it comes to those who switched out of belief systems, 13.7% were Protestant, 12.8% were Catholic, 0.3% were Orthodox, and 1% were Mormon. To put it another way, the study says that for every 100 people who become Protestant, 180 people leave Protestantism. However, for every 100 people who become Catholic, 840 people leave Catholicism.
That's an enormous number. And I think anybody who's sort of paying attention, I grew up in New Jersey, a lot of Catholic immigrants, Italians, Catholics, Italian Catholics, Irish Catholics in that area. So many former Catholics around, so many.
And for every 100 people who become religious, 590 people give up religion. The Eastern Orthodox are basically on par with Muslims, Buddhists, and Hindus in representing 1% of the US population and staying relatively stagnant in terms of population growth. One Orthodox account on X notes that while some Orthodox parishes are growing in converts, others you don't hear about are declining. And unlike Catholicism, which has grown globally over the past century, Orthodoxy has shrunk. In 1910, it represented 20% of the global Christian population. But in 2010, it only comprised 12% of the global population.
So that's a huge issue.
Most of its adherents residing in Eastern Europe. Finally, Oriental Orthodoxy, that emerged from disputes over the Council of Chalcedon in the 5th century, is growing much faster than Eastern Orthodoxy, and the groups are often conflated. So Eastern Orthodox, who say the future is Orthodox, are having mild delusions.
What?
Wow, I didn't expect that.
Well,
I guess the Oriental Orthodox are having a lot of kids.
Let's go, chat. I'm just saying. Chalcedon was the end of the church.
Of grandeur. But Catholics who say America is becoming a Catholic country are having a major hallucinatory episode. Once again, you can't judge reality.
Hank, Sorry, but it's true.
Reality based on what a social media algorithm feeds you, because social media companies don't want to give you truth. They just want to give whatever keeps you clicking, which creates a comfortable echo chamber around users made up of posts that they want to see. Protestantism isn't doing great either, but they are winning in the sense that of the top 3 major religious groups in America, they are experiencing the least decline. Look at it this way: 46% of Americans in the same.
Have you counted Noahides? I don't think you've counted Noahides. You haven't been counting Noahides. I am like the entire increase you're seeing, I am sure, is like mostly Noahides.
Sample were raised Protestant and 40% are still Protestant, a 15% decline. 30% were raised Catholic and 19% are still Catholic, a 36% decline. The number 3 religious group isn't Eastern Orthodoxy or Islam, it's Mormons, with 2.1% being raised Mormon and only 1.5% remaining Mormon, which represents a 25% decline. But wait, you may be asking, how could the Catholic Church have 8 people leave for every 1 convert, but only experience a 20% decline in overall members, whereas Protestantism had a 21% decline? How is Catholicism doing worse in this matter? Well, Salmons correctly identifies the answer. He writes, there's something that keeps the numbers slightly afloat: immigration. As the Pew Survey itself states, immigration has helped to bolster the number of Catholics in the United States. So while millions are fleeing the Catholic Church, new migrants keep the overall numbers from looking horrific. We also should look at where former Catholics go after they leave Catholicism. Pew says that 32% become Protestant, but almost twice as many, 56%, become religiously unaffiliated, or nuns. Not the good nuns, obviously. In fact, very soon, there may not be any religious nuns in America, since less than 1% of nuns are under the age of 40, and the average age of a religious sister is 80. Protestant apologist Javier Perdomo has also done a deep dive on the Pew study, and shows that there is not a colossal shift among Protestants in becoming Catholic. Among those raised Protestant, only 2% now identify as Catholic, whereas among those raised Catholic, 14% of them identify as Protestant. That means there are 7 times as many converts to Protestantism than there are to Catholicism between these 2 groups. Now, some Catholics...
And again, for me, it makes a lot of sense. Protestantism is very nimble, very quick to pick up on trends. Religious entrepreneurs, for better or for worse, are rewarded. Protestantism is astoundingly adept at filling market niches. Again, evangelicalism is a marketplace. And that, as I think it was Louise Perry, but many others have known, there's sort of right now 2 kinds of churches in America. There's sort of high church and low church. And Protestants can much more easily go both ways. And in fact, they can adapt to all sorts of different micro markets in the American culture with tiny little churches. And they don't have to wait for a priest. They don't have to wait for a deacon. They just go and they just do. And of course, non-denominationalism, which is the most nimble area, really goes here fast.
This is why I canceled my DoorDash subscription and switched to Cookunity after months spending way too much on DoorDash.
This book had a very interesting analysis comparing Christianity in Ireland, in Catholicism specifically, in Ireland, in Spain, and in Poland, using some of Adam Smith's observations with respect to religion and its relationship to political power. In a society where religion is perceived as politically neutral, as it was in the U.S. Of U.S. history from the founding of the Republic until the late 20th century, and even that is really up for grabs because of the news, people tend to associate religion, let's say, with political conservatism. But a lot of what's happened is that with the deconstruction from religion, it very quickly gets melded with a particular progressive liberationism, and that then becomes the religion. So his point is strong, but it's really complex in the U.S. situation at the end of the 20th and beginning of the 21st century. Religious movements can hope to appeal to a majority of the population. Secularization is no threat to them, though it obliges them to adopt. But where religion comes to be perceived as a politically partisan, the best it can hope for is to appeal to a majority of partisan voters. This is part of the reason why in America, pastors, generally speaking, try and have a particular religious neutrality, even if in some cases it's paper thin. It's probably too early to tell whether this is an explanation for the reported decline of religiosity in the United States in the 21st century, a question we'll return to in later chapters. But if politicians in the United States succeed in co-opting religious movements so that religion itself is widely seen as partisan, we can confidently expect American religiosity to continue its decline. It will not stabilize until it reaches a level more like that of Western European countries like France and Germany or the United Kingdom. In those countries, the longstanding association with Christian churches with political conservatism gradually reduced the natural catchment area of religious movements during much of the 20th century. Now, this book is really good in trying to get a handle on what we mean by this word religion, but sometimes the book fails in that because, again, you tend to look at religious profession, things that we tag as religious practices, and institutions that we tag as religious. And I think none of those 3 are quite as clear and distinct as we imagine them to be. As both the census and survey data suggest, the big story of religion in the last century is not one of ideological struggle between Christianity and Islam, with Islam winning. It's a story of growing corporatization, with local and folk religions everywhere being gradually but inexorably absorbed into a culture dominated by churches and mosques affiliated with two of the world's major religious brands. Hinduism and Buddhism, the other two main brands, have been much slower to respond, but they are starting to change. And the growing religious assertiveness of India's ruling Bharatiya Janata Party is just a foretaste of much bigger things to come. Now, I think actually we're going to see more on the other end of that, where I wonder if it's going to be harder and harder to maintain the kinds of assumptions about what we tag as religious. Because I think in the collapse of the emissarian mind that we're currently seeing in our culture,
I don't think Paul watched Narendra Modi's discussion with Lex Friedman, and I think he would have found it fascinating. What is going on in India with Hindu nationalism is very, very surprising, and I don't think it's on the radar of most Americans.
it's going to play out differently. And I don't know that we have any idea how it's going to play out. It seems that people in many religious traditions maintain multiple loyalties. Attendance at church, mosques, and temples in cities and towns can coexist with observance of local cults and festivals. Again, now his picture in his book is much more of a global picture than just the United States. The United States is very strange in many respects with respect to what's happening all around the world. When people return to their families in rural areas, or when dates believed to be auspicious are celebrated in their neighborhoods. That's no different in principle from people who have changed their shopping habits to buy most of what they need at Walmart while still buying occasional groceries at the corner store. It may represent a massive change in people's behavior, even if it doesn't involve them completely abandoning their former habits. But without more detailed evidence on that behavior, we can't say much from statistical evidence about whether or not and how folk religions continue to survive. And I think in a lot of that, our tagging of religions as folk religions is changing. I think the rise of the nuns, N-O-N-E-S's, is in fact a new they're post-industrial religious folk religions. I think that's something of what's happening. And I think partially it's happening because, again, there tends to be this register towards, as Clay Rutledge has noted, and as Rod Dreher is celebrating with respect to Christianity, but very anxious about with respect to non-Christianity, the so-called enchanted religions. It's post-axial age religion, and I think it's post-industrial age religion. So some of you might have noted my sister has had to sort of rebrand some things because my sister was going to do a podcast with this person, but this person pulled out and doesn't want to do the podcast anymore. So my sister's going to take her new podcast in a different turn. My sister asked to interview me about some things, which would be fun. But my sister is much more in the deconstructed space. My sister is much more in the post-Christian space. I can talk about this because she's about to talk about it a lot. And if you think I put out a lot of content, when my sister goes on a tear, my sister can put out stuff like you wouldn't believe. But this friend of hers who pulled out of the project, I don't know her at all. I don't know very much about her, but I found her on YouTube. So hey, fair game. I think she has some videos about astrology.
Hi, I'm Brett.
And I'm Jonathan.
This is Darla.
Making Magic Lobster Story, New Moon in Leo, August 1, 2019. And she's, there's a lot of vibe about Handmaid's Tale. And so again, you see this sort of the emergence of this post-industrial folk religion.
Handmaid's Tale?
It's enchanted, which, against a bunch of people are sort of celebrating right now in the Christian space. And other people are a little bit more cautious, saying it's enchanted, but it's also sort of merged with a political sensibility.
It's also demonic.
Musa Al-Gaib, who did an interview with Aaron Wren, he wrote a book, very interesting book. We've never been woke: the cultural contradictions of a new elite, where he writes as a person of color who's basically just scrapping out a living in academia, saying that this whole elite, this whole woke thing, this is what he calls. I'll read a little bit. It talks about Gramsci argued that the idea that help dominant elites maintain or expand their social influence tend to become hegemonic within institutions that are widely promoted by intellectuals, understood broadly to include bureaucrats, technicians, managers, scientists, journalists, clergy, professionals, etc. Symbolic capitalists, for short. Symbolic capitalists, and their institutions they dominate tend to be the first and primary proponents of ideologies which elites legitimize, where elites legitimize their rule. Wokeness is no exception. Americans most likely to profess beliefs associated with wokeness also tend to be. Now you got to be careful because this is a bit more of an academic book, so it isn't sort of colloquial wokeness. He's going to talk about different levels of this in different elements of the United States. There's really a ton of very interesting data in this book. But he basically goes on to show that this certain progressive liberationist way of thinking has captured a number of institutions, and that for many, as when I was reading this this mainline church blog, he basically said, part of the reason the mainline church is going out of business is that they're going out of business intentionally, because they look at the church and they're like, well, why do we do the liturgy and why do we do the services and why do we spend the money on the buildings, when why don't we just sell all the buildings and just invest in social programs and give up the religious pageantry, the religious liturgy, the theological language altogether, and just directly use our resources to pursue the kinds of social agencies and agendas that we think are the heart of our religion. It's like the social gospel no longer needing a church, but saying we can do much more with a soup kitchen or a sign corporation to train and mobilize activists along a whole bunch of lines to create the kinds of social change that we want, to pursue the kind of society that we believe is right and good. I'm going to have to figure out. So I have this because I wanted to listen to the Sam Harris, Tom Holland conversation. I picked up a membership, and he's got like these question and answers behind the membership paywall. And there's some gold back there in terms of some of this stuff, because it's Sam Harris answering a lot of the questions about how things have changed really over the last, say, 10 years of the IDW, and how Sam is sort of engaging in a bunch of the areas that Peter Boghossian is engaging in. But Sam still trying to sort of maintain his gatekeeper atheist line as best he can. He basically concedes that, religion, it's pretty powerful, and without religion, people really suffer. So with my app, I'm really, in many ways, Sam Harris is sort of trying to establish a religion that's not a religion. It's pretty amazing to listen to him talk, because he recognizes that people need sort of a symbolic universe and a community, not so much a symbolic universe, but a community to invest in. And, if you go back and look at the conversation I had on Unbelievable, where the people trying to found atheist churches, it just isn't going. And it just isn't going because you really need the symbolic to energize groups of people to sacrifice on behalf of where they're finding value. And again, in the Divine Economy book, he's got a ton of stuff, some really fresh thinking about, in very pragmatic terms, why are people investing in churches? In very pragmatic terms, why do people invest in high sacrifice institutions? Again, Lyle Shaler, pioneer in the church growth movement, named this a long time ago. He said, countercultural churches grow. He didn't say it this way, but churches in alignment with the culture don't tend to grow very much because they're simply not needed. And so for that reason, we see sort of the collapse of the mainline, the collapse of huge numbers of Catholic, and the rise of post-industrial folk religion. Maybe that's enough for now. I was going to get into a piece of this, which I was chewing on based on the Jordan Hall climbing Mount Sophia conversation recently. Because as I talked with my new friend, Father Matthew Brown, the Orthodox priest from Manhattan, New York, there's a theological level to this. And I think there's a reason why, let's say, many of you who are, I would say, future elites in the culture who have gone Orthodox and trad Catholic. So Hank, I told you, the Catholic numbers aren't good. But I also tend to think that many of you who are going this way in Orthodoxy and in Catholicism, even though your numbers aren't large now and maybe never will be, you are sort of an elite. And I tend to think what's going to happen is Protestantism is going to come behind you, basically benefit from a lot of the...
because it's going to be hollowed out. Like, how can you benefit from the cultural elites all leaving your church?
Really important religious and cultural spade work you're doing, and figure out how to popularize it. It isn't going to be Sam Harris. I think at some point, I don't think Sam Harris is as smart as John Vervaeke. I don't think Sam Harris is as open as John Vervaeke. I don't think Sam Harris is as well read as John Vervaeke. And John Vervaeke quite rightly gave up the religion that's not a religion. And while John is working the philosophical Silk Road, I think in the end, John's going to see that it is in fact the Lindy effect and the legacy religions that make the legacy religions finally what will win. But
wow. A Christian talking about the Lindy effect, a Protestant talking about the Lindy effect. Really? You're going to, as a Protestant, ask for the Lindy effect?
Expect Protestantism, by virtue of its flexibility, is going to take the lessons from the new Orthodox and the trad Caths and the liturgical neo-sacramental Protestants and they're the ones who are going to continue to adapt quickly. But I wonder, as in when we saw religious observance wasn't terribly high in some of these ages, like medieval Europe, wasn't terribly high in the culture overall. And even in America, remember, American church participation reached its peak during the Cold War, where you had a certain alignment in a particular area that I think Protestants were able to really, and Catholics, quite frankly, were able to really come in. But I think we're just going to continue to see the rise of a post-industrial folk religion. And I think Protestants are going to have to, and Catholics and Orthodox are going to have to really think about how this is going to go. I think Islam is going to try and make a play for it too, but I think Islam has certain constraints that are really going to pinch in ways that Christians are going to be able to adapt. I got out of this video what I think I needed to get out of it. There'll be more.
Your father died, and you're sad. Come and join.
Well, that was that. Or survey respondents. What's a Noahide? Yeah. Noah who's? Materialism is fading and paganism is rising. Yeah, probably. Is Paul's sister a witch? No, I don't believe so. But apparently this person she's working with is. Lindy effect. I've heard that in quite some time now. Haven't. People have been talking about it. People have been talking about it a lot. Paul's two flat worlds. Paul is all in on Protestantism, and while there, I don't think Protestantism is dead. I do think it's dying. It's not my fault. Well, yeah, it kind of is my fault, but yeah, I mean, the Pope died. What do you expect us to do? You should jump on, Neil. Yeah, yoga, occult, self-help, mindless, ayahuasca, etc. Exactly. Okay, people. I don't know how much longer I'm going to keep this going. It's been a long time since I've done a really long stream.
Well,
yeah.
I think my dad thinks the Pope is the Antichrist.
Your dad is a strange guy.
Yeah.
But we knew that already.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, actually, James White was supposed to do a dividing line today. I wonder if he's doing it right now.
What's the dividing line?
It's a show. He
Some BS.
I suppose we could be listening in on Matt Taibbi's show. How long has Matt Taibbi's show been going? What was I looking at? I was looking at James White. Ooh.
What's the dividing line?
That's the name of his show.
Yeah,
You don't know who James White is?
No.
James White is a Reformed Baptist debate bro. He's been doing debates for a really long time. And he started by being a Baptist missionary to Mormons. Neil can't jump on. James White is not live. Yeah. I mean, I guess we could check out what's his name? This guy. Where was I?
Markets and paper wealth in terms of bond securities and so on has been questioned. When I'm out here, all I care about is a nuclear mushroom cloud on the horizon. If that doesn't happen, I just keep writing. But I'm well aware that back in the world of affairs, people are freaking out, protesting, and doing all sorts of things that aren't present to my consciousness here.
Well, that makes I mean, look, that makes for a happy life. I gotta say though, Walt, you got kind of a binge.
We'll see if he copyright strikes me. If he does, I'm going to be very upset.
Button thing going on. Are you like reverse aging? You're...
Well, I have to explain this every time that I just dial up the touch-up effect on my on this program. But I should stop. Dr. Kurzweil, Google's head of research, predicts man and machine will merge to the benefit of both of them. I tend to think the machine might get the best of that. But
Walter Kern has kind of grown on me, but I mean, I was introduced to him with Matt Taibbi, but sometimes he rambles and sometimes he doesn't deliver on the things that he's like, oh, X, Y, and Z is going to happen. You watch. And I forget what X, Y, and Z are, but they don't happen.
At that point, unlimited resources, intellectual capacities, and so on will be unlocked. I will break through space and time. Immortality will become a mere detail.
Yeah. I don't want to know anything about the unified field theory except what I need to answer a Trivial Pursuit question, like what it is.
Right.
So it seems like the Pope died, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So maybe we should, can we look at some maybe live CNN coverage or somebody's, see what they're saying about this?
If he does CNN coverage,
what exactly happened?
Double
strike
me.
Well, I mean, I imagine that like failed in all of the systems that have been apparently deteriorating for a while now.
Like, can I listen to him?
In the old days, there might have been some intrigue. Back in the medieval times, most popes died by the hand of the people who wanted a new pope. But
life was much more. I used to have a great book called The Sex Lives of the Popes. Popes used to be a lot more interesting than now. But let's see what
they had real power in those days.
No, I don't want to be copyright stricken by CNN.
I'm happy to be a guest.
Met with him on Sunday. So
when did he die? Did they sort of conceal?
He died on Monday morning,
or was it really today?
No, they're saying today. This feels very Conclave to me. Like, maybe somebody discovered the body at a strategic time. Are we thinking this way now because were we always this conspiratorial, or is it just because of the way life is evolved?
How are we conspiratorial that his death might? Well, I mean, all I'm saying is that yesterday was Easter, the day of resurrection, and to have Pope die on the day of resurrection is a little bit of cognitive clash. But
yeah, do you think maybe they were urging him on? Like,
old people die right after holidays. Like, this is very, very well known. Like, how do you not know this?
Well,
dude, hang in there.
I don't know. I mean, it is true that these days the deaths of aged and famous figures are often thought to have some element of timing and coordination with other, news and media needs. But let's set that aside. Maybe that's true sometimes. I don't know. It's sad that he died.
So, is there going to be a JD Vance Ghoul pool now? Like, is this going to be a thing?
What is that? Because JD was there, that he somehow got a curse, or
yeah, maybe there's like a deadly hand of JD type of thing that will come in. I saw some comments there suggesting that might be a thing now. Hang on a second.
Well, they were going to use some substance on Castro that could be passed through the skin, so maybe they've perfected that. But I doubt very much that the sincere Catholic JD Vance, who really is a sincere Catholic, would have any his grist for the mill.
Yeah, everything is grist for every. There are no
this.
I'm sure it happens.
Vatican intrigue over his successor, and I'll depend on our commenters for that. I just haven't heard a lot of it this time.
Yeah, I'm not a real follower of Vatican gossip, I have to say.
Right.
Although I will say, if you haven't seen the movie Conclave, it's a good primer for the situation. But no, the general tendency, I'm sure right now at this moment there's going to be intense pressure to not nominate a socially conservative pope. But anyway, people are getting on our case about talking about this, so we can move on. So lots of other stuff happened in the last couple of days. First of all, let's just take a look. The stocks were there was an update. I looked at the end of the day. It's not catastrophic, but it's not great either. If you look at just like an end of day recap of the situation.
The following breaking news on Wall Street with stocks tumbling.
Reserve Chair Jerome Powell over the last.
Trump going on Truth Social and saying, "Mr. Too Late," he's a loser.
But does he have a right to have the fight out front? Well, that's the Trump way. The gentleman debates. And
okay, I'm bored of this. We're just guys watching guys watching guys. It is very meta. Yeah, agreed. Bros being men. We need one more layer of watching. Well, somebody else could be watching me. I seem to have lost most of my audience. There's like only 7 of you watching now. Okay, I think I am going to call it quits unless somebody wants to join in the next 5 minutes. I feel like I forgot something. Did I forget something? Wix forum is being discontinued, meaning I won't have forum on my website anymore. Matthew is watching basketball. Ron!
Jacob, shalom, shalom.
Shalom. How are you doing, Ron?
Oh, let me turn off my. Sorry. I'm not doing too bad. So, how are you?
I am doing okay. I am doing okay. What about you?
Came
How
back.
was Easter?
I went to go visit my mom.
How's that?
One of the best times of my life, to be honest with you. It was a good time. You know, she's 83 and soon to be, I'm sorry, 93, soon to be 94. And we just had a good time. It was one of those, it was just a good time. So but I was on the road driving on Sunday. I can say hi to Jesus anytime I want.
How far away does your mom live?
Cleveland, Ohio area. And I live in Indianapolis area. So it's about a 4.5 hour drive, straight highway. Not a big deal. So, and got to see my family, hung out with friends who are a hoot and a holler, had the best ribs known to man in an Irish pub.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm serious. It's called Mulligan's, and I don't like ribs. You know, I'm Jewish. It's just, but dude, they rock. So I had a good time. So how was your Easter?
So it coincided with the last day of Passover.
Oh,
which
wow. Okay.
I went over to my rabbi's for a little meal, which was nice. Yeah.
Okay. Nice. So what you been talking about, Bobby?
Well, I don't know. Did you hear the Pope passed away?
Yeah, yeah. I was kind of glad it happened the way it did for him. It's, I mean, I don't like that anyone passes. Don't get me wrong, but I don't like it when someone's dwindling, and I don't want anyone to suffer. But it seems like, you're at breakfast. I'm gonna go take a nap. Okay, and then you go. Like that would. I hope that's what it was like. That's what it was like for him. And I mean, everyone knows he's been sick.
Yeah, and he died the day after Easter, which, old people often die around holidays.
Really?
Yeah, they kind of just give up the ghost. Yeah.
No, that's interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. That's something around holidays.
Yeah. Yeah, Christmas, there's a real spike in old people dying.
Wow. Okay, there's a lot going on there then. There's all kinds of variables, but
Yeah.
there you go. So what do you make of things? What do you think? Or is it I don't
I mean, apparently he was apparently he was um very, very active in shaping the College of Cardinals.
okay.
And so like there are people who think that he basically chose his he basically chose his whatchamacallit.
Successor.
Yeah.
Sure. Dude, I mean, it's not politics like as usual. It's like okay. That doesn't surprise me. Does that surprise you?
Well, apparently he did it more than most. And so that's what people are saying.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, it's just politics. And I'm not being sarcastic, or I hope I'm not being.
I hear you.
It's like, yeah, if you can stack the deck so that when you deal the cards, you win. You have a successor that has your vision. Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
that's the question is what direction does it go?
Yeah.
Is it conservative? Is it
well, apparently, I mean, he put his thumb on the scale against the conservatives a lot.
Sure. Okay.
And so there appears to be a lot of people who are like not happy about there's a lot of people who think that the person who's going to the person who's going to be taking over is going to be even more, because he's been pretty liberal,
Right.
and that's what I hear. I mean, this was part of, I was kind of hoping. Oh, James White video just dropped. So James, do you know who James White is?
No, who is he? Tell me about him. Please.
James White is a Reformed Baptist minister.
Okay.
And he was going to make a video about the Pope. Yeah, the death of it dropped 4 minutes ago.
So I'm looking it up. James White. Okay.
Yeah, here I'll put it in the
Yeah.
chat.
Bald-headed fella.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's an interesting guy.
How
So
so and why?
he does a lot of debates. He's Reformed Baptist, and he does a lot of Christianity debates. And I generally like listening to him. I mean, I have a lot of things I disagree with him about, but he's pretty smart and astute and knows what he's talking about and cares to know about what he's talking about. Yeah. So I listen to
But, yeah, I guess what's his trip? I mean, in a
debates.
nutshell.
He does a lot of debates. He does a lot of he started out doing a lot of debates with Mormons.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was doing debates with other Christians, with atheists. Now he's kind of turned towards Muslims more. But yeah, he's an evangelist. He's a Christian pastor, But he's pretty interesting. I think he got a big bump because he stood against all of the COVID craziness.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And he's friendly with Doug Wilson. I don't know if you know who he is. He's another pastor. Yeah, I mean, I pay attention to. I had a conversation with Keith Foskey last week. He's another Calvinist.
Okay.
And yeah, you might find that an interesting discussion we
I
have.
like him.
Keith Foskey. He's funny and he's nice.
Yeah.
He's funny and he's nice. I talked to him a tiny bit after the conversation, and he said he might. I mean, he's very busy, obviously, but he said he might be willing to come back for more discussion. Cool. We were just getting to know each other. Like, I've listened to hundreds of hours of Keith Foskey, and he hasn't. He has no idea who I am.
Right. I watched that interview.
Oh, you did.
Yeah, and it's like he did. It's so funny for me to say this. Like, I don't play on your level, but I know how the game is played. And he came in. He didn't know that it's okay to spike the ball.
Right. That was the thing. I was trying to be very nice. Right. At the same time, I was like, after listening to somebody for like 100 hours, you can, like, if I wanted to, I could have been like being mean to him.
Sure.
Trying to, and I didn't want to do that. At the same time, like, I wanted to let the conversation go wherever, so I was trying to explain basically where I'm coming from, and that takes a while until you get kind of a thing. So yeah.
Well, dude, the first time I met you, I met the monster. You're like, I said, I'm Jewish, and you go, no, you're not, bruh.
I did.
Yeah, and it was because, and it wasn't. You were not, looking back on it, you weren't being mean at all.
Right.
It was just your definition of Judaism and mine were two different things at the time. I didn't understand.
Yeah, like I don't think, like, I think if you convert to another language, to another religion, like, I don't believe in cultural Judaism, really. You know?
The reason I think we're both Jewish is because in World War II they would have put us in the same gas chamber.
So who was?
Huh?
I was listening to somebody. Oh, that's who I was listening to. Now I remember. I was listening to somebody recently who was like having this discussion, and he's like, if that's your definition of Jewish, then you're letting the Nazis define who's Jewish and who's not, you know?
Well, and I think, well, here's the thing though, but to be honest with you,
Yeah.
the way I was raised, like in Sunday, listen, Jacob, you'll understand this. In Sunday school, I had people who were in Auschwitz.
Yeah.
So like, and this is so part of my identity was formed. Yeah.
No, and that's, you know, that's one of the things we have a lot of in the Jewish community. Like the Holocaust is the defining moment of Judaism for too many people. And it's like if that's your religion, right?
No, not so much religion, but that's a marker, maybe.
It's your identity.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a weird mix.
Yeah, and it's like, well, that's not what I want my identity to be, you know?
Well, but when I first met you, I didn't understand that about you. And I'm coming from a whole set of assumptions and blah, blah, blah. And then, yeah. But now at this point, I'll be like, I know how to spike the ball back, or at least. And I think Tayo expressed it well, was this is a place of good faith conversations, even if you don't agree. And so this fella, what's his name? Keith. Yeah. Is it Keith? Yeah, Keith.
Keith Foskey.
He didn't understand. It takes a while to get to know someone, get the terms defined, and then once you have the playing field set up, then you can start playing the game with a little more contact with in good
faith. Towards the end, like it started, we started like actually discussing the gospel, you know, and I was letting him speak. I let him, you know, have his piece, and that's why I generally, when I ask people, I understand some people like, I ask for a lot of time. I ask people, hey, if you can, I would like 2 hours.
Oh yeah.
And I generally ask for at least an hour. And that sounds like a really, really long time. And it is. But if you're having a real conversation, you know, it doesn't feel like forever, and it can be interesting and good, right?
Yeah. Right.
I wish I could get my Bible studies back going, but like having Jason there was really good, and he doesn't come on because he's been really busy lately. I have to check on my mail for the wedding invitation. I mean, it's great. People are getting married and having kids and stuff, and being busy with real life stuff, which I'm really happy about. But my channel's kind of like, there's a lot of lurkers. How many people are watching right now? There's 10 people watching right now.
Really? Yeah, there's been a few. Let me see.
Colonimus says a lot of brains have been broken. We have not recovered. Colonimus, I really would love to. I want to have like a discussion with you, because I'm just wondering, like a Satmar Chassid who's listening to my content is not something I expected so much. But yeah. Satmar's very big. It's the largest single Hasidic group.
So there's people watching you, Jacob, from the tribe.
There are definitely Jews watching as well. Ethan, hello there.
Dude.
What's up for the second time today, Jacob? Hey, Ron.
Yeah, you're from Alaska.
No, no, I'm from Wisconsin. My fiance is in traveling healthcare, so we're in Alaska for like the next 2.5 months.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. So you're from Wisconsin. So do you go to Chad's meetups and stuff?
No, I encountered TLC like 2 months ago.
Oh,
Like maybe for the first time 2.5 months ago.
Wow.
You are the second Wisconsinite to be on the stream today.
Was Mark S on here or Chad?
No, Laura was on.
Oh, I haven't seen Laura before.
When I drove through Wisconsin, I went and visited Laura. This was a while back. Yeah, this was like 3 years ago.
Where are you located, Jacob?
Los Angeles, and I drove all the way out to Wisconsin.
Dude,
Chad,
I bet you knew where I worked then for a little while, Jacob.
maybe.
Well, I was a substitute teacher at an Orthodox Jewish school in West Hollywood.
Which one?
Yayo, Yayoe.
Okay. Okay. A Yivo, I think it is. Y-I-V-O? Yivo?
No, it was Yayoe.
Y-A-Y.
Yeshiva Aharon O-H-R Eliyahu.
Or Eliyahu. Oh.
I know I'm saying the words wrong, but something like that.
You were teaching English at Or Eliyahu? Was Mr. Gabai still there?
I was a substitute teacher, so I was teaching all different kinds of classes.
Okay. Abraham Gabai used to teach there many years ago when I used to teach at the Cheder of Los Angeles. But yeah, Or Eliyahu. Yeah, well, I mean, how long ago was this?
Probably like 8 years ago.
8 years ago? Okay. Yeah.
7 years ago.
Yeah, I was teaching in an Orthodox school 15, probably closer to 20 years ago. Yeah. Interesting. So you're a teacher?
No, I've had a lot of jobs, and none of them. There's no logic to the jobs that I've had. I've just lived in different places and found work in many different fields to pay bills. I'm like, I guess I'm a writer by trade, I suppose.
Ooh, what do you write?
What do I write? I mean, like right now I'm working on a Substack. That's where I'm putting all my writing. I'm turning those into YouTube videos because most of the traffic has come via YouTube. So that just makes sense.
What's the subject?
I mean, the subject is like my life.
Okay.
But I mean, it's the Bible, God, literature, modernism, postmodernism, metamodernism, the founding of America.
Interesting. So you have a YouTube channel. What's your YouTube channel?
It's my name. Everything's my name.
Ethan. How do you say your name?
Kahi. I mean, I guess essentially, like I've never been able to like specialize in any kind of field, so I've been trying to become a generalist and figure out like, because I just can't unconnect things in my brain, which I'm not saying is the right way to do it. It's the only way I know how to do it. I guess
You were on Christian Baxter a week ago. I mean, a month ago. Sorry. Yeah. Interesting. I didn't actually see that one. Sorry.
Good.
Why good?
Because that hopefully that means you weren't on the internet at that point and you were doing something in real life that was enjoyable.
I don't know about that. Yeah. So, how'd you find your way here?
I think I first encountered PVK through a guy named Kent Dobson.
Have never heard of him.
So Kent Dobson used to be attached to a pretty large church in Michigan.
What kind of church?
Do you know the name Rob Bell?
That sounds really familiar.
Mars Hill, but the Michigan Mars Hill, not the Seattle Mars Hill, if you're aware of evangelicalism at all.
Okay.
Ken Dobson took over a church that Rob Bell was at previous after Rob Bell got thrown out of evangelicalism.
They were Presbyterian?
I think they were non-denominational.
Okay. Non-denominational evangelicals? Okay.
Yeah, just the Wild West.
Huh. I know Trip Parker. Do you know Trip Parker? He actually went to Mars Hill, the actual Mars Hill for a while. He's one of the old school people around here from like years and years back. Not so involved anymore. Yeah.
How did you first get started with what you're doing? Because it seems like you've been around for a long time.
Yeah.
I've chased the StreamYard thing back to you originally.
Yeah.
The Discord thing I find incredibly stressful. I just hate Discord. I cannot stand it. But yeah.
Is that a Hebrew tattoo on your wrist?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I got one on each wrist.
Tohu bara. Okay.
Well, yeah, tohu wabohu and then bara.
Okay, so I could only see the tohu. I didn't see the vavohu. I see. Interesting. Are you left-handed or right-handed?
I'm right-handed.
Okay, so bara. Okay, I get it. I like it. The way I got involved. So, my life story, and to try to be brief about it, is I grew up in a pretty secular Sephardic family, and I became very religiously observant in Orthodox Judaism.
Can you define Sephardic?
Sephardic. So my family's from Iran, and so the traditional Sephardic families, like, they tend to be Orthodox-ish, not Reform. But my family, like, we didn't keep kosher or Shabbat or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the synagogue we didn't go to was Orthodox, you know? And so I became very observant. And then for various reasons, I became convinced that that's not what God wanted in the world for me. And so I left the religious stuff behind me. I thought I had left it behind me because I was like, okay, I'm just going to be a good person. And I ended up doing all kinds of things, including becoming an insurance agent. I've been an insurance broker for like 11 years now. And so about 8 years ago, I was an insurance broker so basically everyone, Sephardic actually means Spanish, but Sephardic refers to the north of Africa and most of the Middle East. There are Sephardic people. It's weird. It would take a long time to explain. I just don't want to bore Ethan. He's our guest. So what happened was I was in the Jordan Peterson. So Jordan Peterson came on to the scene, and I liked him mostly for mental health. You know, it was like, okay, for my mental health, I started listening to Jordan Peterson. I started going to a Jordan Peterson meetup here in Los Angeles. And that was actually the first time I had heard of Paul Vanderklay. Was one of the people at the Jordan Peterson meetup mentioned Paul. And then what happened was I started having a lot of people around me who had questions about Judaism and religion in general. And I just found myself answering a lot of questions for atheists coming back to religion. I got involved in the IDW thing, and Eric Weinstein had a Discord server, which I was very active on.
I was on there, but never active.
I was very active on it, and I mean, I still keep in touch with Eric a tiny bit, but that when that blew up, I moved more onto Bridges of Meaning because I thought Paul would be better at creating community, and it was a place where I found myself. You know, lots of people. I ended up creating kind of this community, which became my channel / Discord server, which for a long time was the Jewish corner of this little corner. But I think this little corner, as opposed to the Jordan Peterson sphere, is kind of becoming basically just straight up Protestant. And so I'm not the type of person, like, if I am your friend today, I'm not going to stop being like, the dial might move, but like, I don't go from, hey, we're good friends today, and tomorrow, like, I hate you or something like that. Like, that never happens. Right.
You're family based, I assume. I just mean like your friends become a ring outside of family, but it still has more of a family bond than we're friends just because of a shared ideology.
Yeah, like you know, if my friend stops believing in XYZ, that's not a reason for me to stop being friends. Like, that just makes zero sense to me, you know? And so, like, I've kind of moved out of the TLC because I believe TLC isn't working exactly as it needs to. Although tomorrow night, like, we're having an estuary meeting at my house again. God knows why. But like, I affiliate more with I don't know if you've met Father Eric and Mark Lefebvre, but
I interacted with Mark Lefebvre on Twitter, but it didn't go well, and I don't know if it was my fault.
No, Mark is like, Mark and I are we are pretty aligned. We still don't get along because Mark is almost as much of a son of a gun as I am. He's pretty strong-willed, and he's very low in politeness, like I am. Maybe even more low in politeness than I am. But so it's not strange for people not to get along with Mark. It's pretty normal.
Well, and I don't even know we didn't get along. I would just ask a couple questions, and I just didn't understand. I mean, I'm quite a disagreeable person.
Okay.
Maybe I'm polite in my disagreements, maybe, but that's probably the nicest interpretation of myself I could offer.
Okay.
But disagreeable, but this does not bother me in the slightest.
Yeah, so I did my Jordan Peterson personality test.
Yeah.
And people called me disagreeable, and I was fine with being called disagreeable. But disagreeableness cuts into two, which is empathy and politeness. And I am very high in empathy and very low in politeness. So I come out like weirdly middling in agreeableness, despite like sometimes being not very agreeable.
I'm pulling mine up right now because I can't remember. I had a few of those where it was like it was split weird.
Yeah.
Okay, so what? I'm agreeable, 29 overall, 72 in compassion, and 4 in politeness.
Yeah. So I had I was very low politeness. I was like 10 politeness, and I was like 90 in compassion, and I was like, so ended up being like 55 or something.
Yeah, we have that same split. That's funny.
Yeah. And yeah, so that's me.
Okay, so TLC doesn't work the way you think it should. Father Eric and Mark Lefebvre.
Yeah.
Mark Lefebvre are doing a different thing over here.
Yeah.
Could you explain that to me?
So the big thing is we rejected the TLC label, this little corner label. And
was there already a first council?
Kind
Did
of.
I show up after the first council of this?
There's been a few council, like if you go back like 3 or 4 years ago, like the Paul Vanderklay is fired streams that I did a while back, like it was my attempt. Like Paul Vanderklay still comes on my channel and still like mentions me on his channel, and like if he were in Los Angeles, I would buy him a beer, it's like, but I like, so for me the big thing was when Joey Antonassi, who was the person who set up Bridges of Meaning, the Discord server, when he quit, and I didn't know who was taking over as the moderator, as the head mod, I was like, Paul, like, what's going on here? And Paul was like, well, it's not my Discord server. It's like, Paul, that does not work in my estimation. And it doesn't, which is why I left Bridges of Meaning and I haven't been back. I mean, I still like things from Bridges of Meaning still spill over onto my Discord and onto my channel. But and like, it's not like I don't support Paul. I support Paul. It's just I'm not going to invest resources like I did before, which I was investing a lot in trying to make TLC happen, and now I'm trying to make my own things happen. Yeah.
What were you trying to make happen?
So Garth actually really, so this was on that trip that I went through Wisconsin. Garth lives in Minneapolis. And it was the first time I had met him, but we were talking and he said to me, it seems that the people who are most invested in this little corner are people who had strong community and they want to have community again. And that really is, I think, like, I have seen community working, which is why I mean, frankly, the community we have, I think, is working. Like if my channel and my Discord and my local Los Angeles group wasn't functioning, I wouldn't be doing what I am.
So what did you need from TLC that TLC wasn't given? Or is TLC even the right word? Is it really Paul Vanderklay?
See, yeah, that's the thing. Like TLC was bigger than Paul Vanderklay. It seems to be so. Grimm called it a flotilla, and it is kind of a flotilla,
Yeah,
right? So, like Sam Tiedemann, Transfigured,
Yeah.
he's kind of got his thing going, and he's doing Midwestuary, right? In Grail Country, they did Northeastuary, and apparently, some people are doing Southeastuary in the summer or after. I'm not sure exactly what's going on with that. And those are all like estuary related, but it's like, and I try to be supportive of Paul and his estuary project, but it's just like that project isn't it certainly isn't Jewish inclusive. So the way I used to explain it is, I had two analogies I would use. One of them was a basketball league, right? Where you have different teams and we all play against each other. And I thought there's a necessity for there to be some sort of league where we know what the rules were. And frankly, when Joey was still involved, there was something was growing, and when it became time for it to actually become a thing, I don't think Paul Vanderklay stepped up to make it a thing like it needed to be, and that's why I think it kind of started fragmenting. And so, like, people still talk about TLC in this little corner. I don't see it being much more than Paul, whereas it used to be bigger than Paul. Especially like we were doing things like when Ryan, who you probably have never heard of, had a website you definitely never heard of called this-little-corner.com. It's been brought.
No, I've tried to go on there and there's nothing there.
Yeah, it's down. Yeah, Michael is trying to continue it, but that was the type of thing. It's like, hey, like this is a valuable thing here.
Was that the database where you could search all different kinds of videos that had tags?
Yeah,
I heard about that. That sounds very cool.
It was very cool, and I tried to be very supportive of it, but somebody's got to take responsibility for stuff like that. Or the Randos United YouTube channel. I tried to help make it happen more as a thing, and that's what the StreamYard stuff. So I got the StreamYard, like the streaming idea from Muslim internet, actually. But yeah, so like there were things growing which Paul would claim that, oh, if you build it, I will support you. And then people would build it and Paul wouldn't support them. And it would be like, Paul, like, you're not leading. And if you're not going to lead, I thought when leadership became necessary, he would have taken the reins, and he didn't. And so
wouldn't that require him leaving his church though? I know his church isn't very big, but like this thing seems pretty chaotic across the board and would need someone to be like, if someone's going to lead a flotilla,
right,
that requires, I think that requires a very specific kind of leadership even.
Well, I mean, so let's put it this way. I think his church is pretty supportive of it anyway. It would have taken a lot more work and possibly like yeah, there were possibilities for things and ways in which it could have gone forward, which Paul decided he doesn't want to do.
I hope this isn't disrespectful, but I wonder if there would have been denominational consequences, and he would have been, if that would have been a road that would have led to kind of him being cast out from a denomination.
Oh no! The CRC very much loved it. Like,
but then at what point does the CRC say, "Well, you're under us, so then this thing is under us"? Like, I'm only speaking from mega church land over in Wisconsin, and I saw things like this that became institutionalized.
I hear you, and that, I mean, I there are concerns there. There, without going into specifics, there were ways in which it could have been handled. Paul and I thought we were moving that way, but look, if Paul doesn't want, like, okay, a requirement for a leader is that he should not want to lead, because if a person wants to lead, that's your first clue. That's not a good person to lead, right? We end up with leaders who want to lead, because the people who don't want to lead will go ahead and not lead, even when it becomes clear that we need them to lead, right? So we have the same problem here on my channel with my corner with Chazi, right? Chazi doesn't want to be a rabbi. He thinks he thinks he's not good enough to be a rabbi, and it's like, Chazi, stop that. Be the rabbi you were raised to be. His grandfather was a very prominent rabbi.
His brother's in training.
He has two brothers who are rabbis. Chazi was raised to be and trained to be a rabbi. He decided not to, and he went a different way, which honestly I think has made him even better trained to be a rabbi, right? So Chazi could, should, and would be a rabbi if he would stop being so selfish. I'm kind of prodding him. I don't know if he's going to see this, but I've definitely been prodding him for a while just to go take his stupid exams. He refuses.
And what about you?
I'm not observant. I'm and like, I'm too much of a mess to be a rabbi. Like Yosef and Chazi, they, like, I do what I can. I do what I do, but like, my life situation is like, yeah, I do what I can, but like, I'm not material for it. I look, if to the extent some people, and there are people who kind of think of me in a rabbinic thing, it's like, to the extent that I can, like, that's what I wanted to be, but that's not where God has me. I'm an administrator. I do what I can, and I do what I do. Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned that the TLC is becoming too Protestant or completely Protestant,
Exclusively Protestant. Yeah.
Can you talk more about that? Because I mean, like, I come from a Protestant background.
Mhm.
I was on staff at a big mega church. Walked away from that, moved to Los Angeles.
Mhm.
Spent 8 years in exile, and then 2 months ago, God got a hold of me.
Mm-hmm. How did God get a hold of you?
I was in a conversation with Grok.
Okay. I will have to go watch that video, because that was the title of the video that Baxter made. So when I got involved with Bridges of Meaning. Joey, who was an atheist, was running Bridges of Meaning, and he made sure to keep space open for people who are not Protestants, right? So, and that included Father Eric, that included Job, that included Sam Tiedemann, that included me, right? We were like, so Sam Tiedemann is Unitarian. He's a biblical Unitarian. He is like, he wants to be included with the cool kids. Like, he wants the
He
Protestants.
wants in the Big Tent.
He wants the Protestants to think of him as a Christian, but Protestants don't think of him as a Christian. And so he like, that door has to be explicitly held open. Job ended up becoming a Christian despite starting as and we're not getting atheists anymore where we used to be, right? I kept the door open by chasing out the anti-Semites. I can't do that without Joe. When Joey was supporting me in my, job as trolling the anti-Semites, getting them to pull out their Jew hatred and expose themselves, right?
Yeah.
It was different. So I ended up being like, okay, my Jewish section is going to retreat to my Jewish section, and it has, right? That I don't even know what's happening with the atheists. Father Eric, I don't know how involved he is with Bridges of Meaning. He has his own channel, and right now is when he's usually streaming, but because of Easter, he took this week off. So Mark Lefebvre, me, and Father Eric kind of split off into what we call the Jordan Peterson sphere. Grail Country kind of seems to have created its own thing, and I wish them well. It's just there's very strong philosophical disagreements between where I come from and where Grail Country comes from. So
we were living Seattle area before Alaska, so I went to the Grail Country estuary and met a few of those folks.
Oh, so have you met Antonio? If you went to you went to the estuary in Olympia. So Antonio is one of my Noachites.
I don't know if I met
Antonio. Yeah, I don't know how regularly he went, and now he's got 2 kids or 3 kids. I think he has 2 kids right now. He's got 2 kids. Part of the thing, and this is one thing I always agreed with both Paul and Joey about, was the goal of this community was to move people offline. And a lot of people have graduated from the online to the offline, which I'm very happy about. But there's plenty of people who are now married, have kids, etc. And so my model, which I call Fountain of Comfort, little clue, people, please go and visit Fountain of Comfort, and it would be very nice if you gave $5 a month, because that would tell me that there are people who care. But Fountain of Comfort, part of my idea with Fountain of Comfort is that it shouldn't just be something where people come, get what they want, and leave. It should be something where people come, get what they want, leave, and then feed back to make sure that there's for other people, like just like a public fountain. When you it's in the description. Oh, actually, yeah, it's in the description. Fountain of Comfort is in the description.
Like every single one of your YouTube videos has it in the description.
Yeah. So the idea of a public fountain is like the entire community maintains the fountain, and everybody who wants to or needs to comes to the fountain and gets their comfort and leaves, and we still all contribute to making that fountain be something real, right? And if whatever we're doing here, whatever you want to call it, is not something that is... When I visited Paul, I asked him, where are the kids? And he said to me something that like absolutely floored me. I mean, with your experience with the Jewish community, you might realize this. He said, we're in the part of the life cycle of my church where it's dying. And the idea of a life cycle of a church where you anticipated it dying is just insane to me, right? Like, if it's not something that so Nathan, one of our good friends who I visited with his wife, by the way, Nathan, you guys really should at least grab that icon away from Zach. Nathan, like, he's like, I'm looking forward to the day when my boys are out of diapers and I can get more involved again. You know, like my hope is that we can create something that is intergenerational. And frankly, like, people complain that I rail against Protestantism a lot, and I do. But I didn't pick that word, right? And it's the word we started associating with a lot of things that are uniquely Protestant, not definitional of Protestantism, right? Like so the Protestant Reformation brought a lot of things into the world which have become endemic in the Catholic world and in Jewish world and everything else, and Eastern Orthodoxy. But there are certain things that stayed Protestant, frankly, because I think they're not very good things.
Like what?
Like not being intergenerational.
So is that like the hyper individualism?
Hyper individualism, but like even the idea of like constantly planting new churches, like a Protestant mission field is always wheat or soy or it's never an orchard. It's never an orchard. It's never, I am going to make this tree and this tree is going to be here and give fruit year after year after year.
Yeah, it's endless churn.
Yeah. I think that's very good for conquering new terrain. It's not very good for, it wears away the soil too much soil erosion.
That it's funny because that soil erosion thing came up towards the end of my long conversation with Grok, where God got a hold of me at the end of it. Yeah, that soil erosion, that's huge. I agree with you on that. Yeah, one of my I guess like a personal life goal or like wild dream that I'll probably never be able to achieve. I don't know the history well enough to know when it happened, but I think Protestant uprooted itself. And And so Protestantism is just like running around. It's just a tree with branches running about, bumping into everything and knocking things over, but it left its roots behind. And so it's like, for myself, I like the experiencing Orthodox Judaism.
Yeah.
I was probably there, maybe it was only half a year, 6 months was I substitute teaching. I mean, that like profoundly transformed me. I would, whenever I was, so I was a sub, so I'd often get called in for like the morning or the afternoon. But no matter when I was called in, I always either stayed late or came early to make sure that I was there for lunch, because I ate lunch in the rabbi room. Because there were only two of us Gentiles, me and my roommate. He's like an actual teacher, so he got my foot in the door. I used to work at summer camps. I did environmental education, so now I had like the chops to like get through the interview. And I would just sit in the rabbi room and ask questions. And I, somewhere in the little journal, I have it written down, like some kid punched another kid. I remember sitting there being like, oh, the puncher is going to get in trouble. And then I sat there for I don't know, however long lunch was, an hour of that. And the rabbi is kind of like passing it back and forth. And it was like, well, like, why was the punch thrown? How was the punch thrown? Like, was it a real punch? Was it a fake punch? What happened yesterday? I went, oh, the puncher's not always the one who's wrong. There's more questions to ask. And I just like, I haven't been able to like stop asking questions. I was like, okay, so however it is that these rabbis think, I need to figure out how do I develop a consciousness like that? Because that's the kind of consciousness that the Bible comes out of.
Yeah.
And I need to attempt to move towards that, because the way I'm thinking now is limiting me drastically.
Interesting. So could you tell me more about your family background? Like culturally, what culture your parents?
My dad's Scotch Irish.
Okay.
And my mother's Dutch.
Have you how familiar are you with Thomas Sowell?
Economist?
Yes.
That's all I got right there.
And
conservatives really like him.
He wrote a book I highly recommend. He doesn't enforce his copyright, called Black Rednecks and White Liberals. I highly recommend you check it out.
Why? Just quickly, and then somebody else can jump in.
He helped me understand the cultural context for white WASP culture with much much more granularity than I realized. And so he talks about the difference between Northern English, like Northern British, Scotch/Irish culture versus English culture. And like when you said Scotch Irish, I was like, yeah, that's what he was talking about. It's a specific, I mean, he calls it redneck culture. I don't mean to be yeah. I get it. But you might find it incredibly interesting. And it has a chapter I'm very fond of called "Are the Jews Special?" And it's really good. Kirk is a regular. We're working on Kirk being more comfortable, like meshing with other people's conversations as opposed to taking it off track. And Michael is Michael. How you doing, Michael?
Pretty good. I just wanted to jump in with the little bit that I got of your soil churning discussion there. you know, I think obviously that thing is a problem of like evangelicalism that has been duly noted by the kind of deconstructing class of people. Um, but I think it's also, you know, it's a reaction. It's not. It's there's something about the way that society, like since the Industrial Revolution, has caused people to move about so much and lose their roots, that the whole like church planting thing is actually one of the only things that was able to adapt to the different way that people are living. So, because all the ones that had like the mainline Protestants and those are all irrelevant, and there's so much like nominalism in the Catholic Church that's just not very, you know, it's not.
Do you mean nominalism or do you mean
I
nominal Christianity?
well, I mean nominal. Their faith is nominal in
Yeah.
that sense. Yeah,
Okay.
it's you know, and I mean that's like, yeah, I can see the direct between my grandparents, my uncles, and my cousins. Like it just the substance of their faith eroded in those 3 generations, like completely. You know, so but I think that there is something of a need for a Judeo-Christian faith, because that aspect of like not even just like the geographical planning of roots, but like that, like the life aspect of it is very much missing. Like the evangelical churches are still growing because there are still lots of people that need something, and they're the ones that go out and find people and reach them. But then it's okay, now get on board with the team of people going and finding more people and like bringing them in, and not fostering depth in the roots and the whole pattern of life. So so there's a good aspect of it, but it's only one half of the equation, I think.
Is Michael finished? Okay.
Sounds like
Yes.
I just had two things to say to the conversation you were having with Ethan. The first question is, what does the book say about the Jews? The second question is, do you think that Protestantism was the main reason for the rise of Reform and Conservative Judaism?
So as far as the book and the Jews, it actually shows that the Jews are. He has this term called middle class, not middle class, middleman minorities, which makes a lot of sense, and I highly recommend looking into it. And it is something that that happens in pretty much all societies, all large societies, but in Christian and Muslim societies, middlemen minorities are like Jews. Um, the As far as the Protestant Reformation, I mean, Reform Judaism. So Orthodox Judaism formed as a reaction to Reform, which started in Germany and was called Reform because they styled themselves after the Protestant Reformation. And Conservative broke off from the Reform movement here in the United States and called itself Conservative in reaction
It started in
to
Germany.
the Reform. So, yeah, I mean, Reform and Conservative, and to some extent, I mean, Orthodoxy started in Austria. In Orthodox Judaism started as a denomination in opposition to Reform, and that's why Sephardic, like being Sephardic, which was divorced from it and did not encounter Protestant Reformation. It's funny, like the Protestantism is actually now working its way into Islam, and you're seeing a process of denominalization within Islam that really did not exist 50 years ago, especially online. And so, yeah, I think the Protestant Reformation very much has affected the entire world, and in many ways for the better.
Is that decentralization?
I wouldn't call it decentralization. There is a lot of individualism in it. Like the process of individuating, high agency. No, like this is different from Sunni and Shia. Like Sunni and Shia are ethnic divides mostly. Now, what's started within even Shia, but mostly within Sunni, is a rise of what's called mazhab and aqidah, which are denominations of Sunni Islam, and that wasn't really the thing that it has become. Certainly over the past 100 years, but I would say even past 50 years. There is a sense of individual conscience and faith and creed and being definitional. When I had Rabbi Burton on, he, in a sense, he said that he thought Maimonides, when he formulated the 13 principles of faith, which actually weren't really a creed, they became historically a creed. That was in response to this situation where the world, and it may be all of Christianity, was, I mean, the Great Schism was 1,000 years ago, and that was, in a sense, a sort of denominationalism within Christianity. I don't know. Maybe you can trace it beyond the Protestant Reformation, but the Protestant Reformation just allowed for individuation in ways that a lot of cultures simply never consider, which is me. And I mean, you could bring that all the way back to Judaism, right? This idea of converting from one ethnos to another, right? To the fact that you were able to become a Hebrew, you were able to convert and be a part of the tribe in Judaism is novel. It doesn't exist in other religions, as far as I know, pretty much at all.
Which Christian denomination looks most like Judaism?
Funny enough, we've been having that discussion a lot, and in a strange way, I would say the accoutrements, the facade of Protestantism oftentimes looks closest to Judaism, especially once you get into like the Messianics and Hebrew roots movement and stuff like that. They really dress up in a very Jewish manner, right? But it's very superficial. And while I think Eastern Orthodox Christianity, even like Father Stephen gets involved on my channel a lot. Father Stephen DeYoung, he his version of Christianity, which he claims to be the most authentic and real, like Eastern Orthodoxy, and I can't say that he's not representing Eastern Orthodox Christianity well. I wonder how people would react to understanding how Jewish his Eastern Orthodoxy is, which I believe is incredibly Jewish. It's like the machinery, like the engine is a lot more Jewish. Eastern Orthodoxy has a Jewish engine in a like Christian whatchamacallit, Christian shell, whereas I think like Protestants and most specifically like the Restorationists have like a pagan engine in a very Jewish looking shell. It's kind of like if you took a Porsche and a Ford and you switched engines, right? I get it, chassis. Yeah, I get this. I get into this argument with Jews a lot who don't engage with Christianity as much as I do, and they imagine, because externally, like you look at Eastern Orthodox and Catholic like practice, it's very like a lot of the things they do are just so far removed from Judaism. But and then the Protestants, especially with their iconoclasm, etc., they claim to be very scripturally focused, but at the same time, I think there's fundamental ways in which it's very removed from Orthodox Judaism.
Yeah, I mean, I would also say like I'm not like an expert, but I've been to different churches, and like in my experience with Protestant versus Catholic versus Orthodox, I've been to Orthodox. I think I've been to Catholic, but I've definitely been to Orthodox, and I've been to Protestant. In my experience, the Orthodox and Catholic services, there's a sense in which it's a little bit further away from Judaism in the sense that the way Jewish congregational life works is that the congregation hires the rabbi, whereas in the Orthodox and Christian, it's the father is an employee of the Pope. So you can say there's a sense in which Judaism is less hierarchical than Catholicism and Orthodoxy in that respect. But I do think there's a problem in the sense that the Protestants have the same problem that Reform and Conservative Jews do, where they don't necessarily listen to the rabbi. They think, well, because I'm a member of this religion, I get to dictate what Judaism is for me. And I think that's a very Protestant mindset, in my view, because it's basically saying that instead of looking to what the Masorah says, it's basically theological egalitarianism.
There's a lot there. I mean, Judaism used to be a lot more local, right, in terms of like rabbinic leadership than it's become, and that's a change. I mean, Judaism has undergone several very real changes over the years. Like, it's not like Judaism is a static religion. We wouldn't want it to be a static religion. Like, it is. Paul says religion is politics is now, religion is always, right? Say that again.
What do you mean, Paul? Do you mean Paul of
Paul
Tarsus or Paul Vanderklay? Okay.
Paul Vanderklay, right? He says politics is now, religion is always, right? Like, religion is supposed to be always, and if your religion is dead and cannot express itself in time, then it's not a living religion of the living God. So, like, I believe my religion is the religion that was revealed on Mount Sinai to Moses, but that's in the same way as there's a famous scene in the Talmud where Moses goes up to heaven to and obviously this is anthropomorphizing language, but he goes up to get the Torah and he sees God sitting there. Yeah. Colonimus knows what I'm talking about. He sees God is tying crowns on the letters of the Torah. Baruch Shekivanti, Colonimus. Baruch Shekivanti. And he asks God, what is making you do this? And God says to Moses, there is someone who in the future will expound mounds and mounds of Torah from each one of these crowns. And Moses says, show him to me. And God says, Chazor bach, meaning go back, right? Return. And Moses goes and sits in the 8th row, and that is meaningful, in the 8th row of Rabbi Akiva's classroom. And Rabbi Akiva is teaching something, and Moses doesn't understand. And one of the students of Rabbi Akiva asks Rabbi Akiva, where did you learn this? And Rabbi Akiva says, halacha Lamoshe Messinai. It was taught to Moses on Mount Sinai. And Moses is it's because they don't understand that, like the oven of Achnai I've done many times, and I have videos on, but there's a reason why they get offended, because they think it means something that it doesn't.
Who's
but
they?
Protestants, like Christians, when they read that story, they get mad.
All Christians?
What?
Do you think it's like all Christians or specifically?
Yeah, I think if you read that story without understanding the Jewish context, it's very easy to misunderstand and to get upset at it, and lots of people do. But that's a different story. But this story, like the idea that the Torah contains in it things which were taught to Moses that Moses did not understand, because the Torah is eternal, right, is something people have a lot of trouble with. Like Judaism is a religion of a living God. It's not what it was today 2,000 years ago, because it is what was revealed on Mount Sinai to be applicable to today.
Do you think something was lost when they turned scrolls into a book?
So we would say something was lost when the Talmud was, the Mishnah and the Talmud were written down. So the oral law versus the written law, right? The invention of codices, there is a problem with the main problem I have with codices of the Bible is people have a book they think is the Bible, and they imagine you read it from beginning to end. The Bible is not a book. The Bible is a library. And if you treat it as a single book, you are missing out a lot. But it was the writing down of the Talmud, which was necessary, and the composition of the Mishnah, which was necessary, which in a sense made the oral law far more detail oriented and stultified than it is in its most pristine state.
Yeah, I've wondered about the fact that like if I have a Bible and I open it, I can only see one page. And I've never experienced a scroll, so I don't really know how it works, but I'm curious, you unroll a scroll, you have more information available to you than on just 2 pages. Is that accurate or no?
Well, I mean, very few people. I rarely use a scroll. I don't think that's the big difference. I think oftentimes the silver lining arguing is hella fun. This is true. Although they argued even before the composition of the Mishnah. But so what I compare, I think the difference is Christianity is pretty much always engaged the Bible in translation, and I call a translation a picture of the ocean. If you have a picture of the ocean you put up on your wall, it might be a lot more beautiful than if I were to walk or drive the 4 miles to the ocean. Right now, the ocean might not look as beautiful as it would in whatever picture I chose to hang up on my wall. But it's a 2-dimensional version. Whereas when you go to the beach,
the smell
it. You can jump in. You can feel it. You can get wet and you can drown in it. Completely different experience. And especially with Hebrew, I was having this argument with somebody on Twitter. Especially with Hebrew, like Hebrew is a much more ambiguous language than English and Greek are, right? You can read the same word in multiple ways with different meanings, right? And all of those are correct, right? And so it's, for example, this is one of my favorite examples I like to give. I think it's in Genesis. Where is it? 5, 6 through 11. Okay, let's pull up Genesis 5. Okay, so Genesis 5. Where's Enosh? Enosh. Why can I not find? Am I looking? What verse does it say that Enosh huchal likro Beshem Hashem. Where is it? No, no. Let me. Enosh spelled Aleph Nun Vav Shin. Ugh, why did it give me so many Alephs? There. It's sorry, chapter 4. Okay. And Shet, to him also was born a son. Are you guys seeing this? Yeah, okay. And he called him Enosh. Then men began to call upon the Lord by name. Right? Okay, so what does this mean here? Right? This is an accurate translation, right? Az huchal likro b'shem Hashem, right? So during the time of Enosh, then began people calling in the name of God. Well, he's the third generation from Adam. Adam didn't call in the name of God. Shet didn't call in the name of God. The other people at the time weren't calling in the name of God. So the rabbis understand as huchal likro b'shem Hashem. So the word huchal, which means to begin, can also mean to profane, to desecrate. Okay? And how the rabbis understand it is he started calling God's name in a way that started to desecrate it, to make it profane, right? Where like they started also thinking of the Son as a servant of God and a representative of God. And that is the sin of Enosh, is where the rabbis understand the beginning of idolatry, right? And that makes sense when you look at the word in Hebrew as huchal, because that word means to begin and it means to desecrate.
It's a pun.
It's a pun. Mm-hmm. Right? It's something that resonates when you're reading it in Hebrew, to read it both ways simultaneously. But when I translate it, I'm never going to translate this verse except in a very specific context. But if you ask me to translate Genesis 4, I'm not going to translate then they began to desecrate the name of God, unless I am trying to help you understand something different than the plain understanding, than the peripheral. And like, you can't do that in translation.
You can't even do that in translation software.
No.
Because like I spent a lot of time with Protestant ministers across Protestant denominations, but I was probably 24 when I realized, oh, nobody speaks Hebrew or Greek. Like you all use translation software. And so I started digging into that, and that's like helpful. It's better than not having translation software, but it doesn't give you puns or metaphors or design patterns.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people try very hard with logos, and look, there are patterns and stuff, but I don't know if you watched the discussion between Sam Tiedemann and Rabbi Singer.
Recently?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that.
He says, and I agree, and it's an audacious thing to say, but there's a reason, and here, I'll show you this one clip I was shocked to actually get and find. Here, where's my clips? This is probably a really old clip. Here. It's not available anymore. Oh well. So the shoot. So it's two people who were talking to each other, both of whom grew up in evangelical contexts, and they were talking about how when they started learning Hebrew, people were like, that's bad. You shouldn't do that. And like, because there's a Judaizing influence to actually knowing your Hebrew. And I
Wait,
know.
Say that again. I didn't understand that.
There's a Judaizing influence to knowing Hebrew. It's what people go down this road of being very strong Christians, learning Hebrew, and leaving Christianity for Judaism. Like, people have seen it a lot.
Sure.
You know? And so, and frankly, I think it's true. When you know Hebrew, there's a reason I teach Hebrew on my channel. I think there's a lot of arguments you no longer end up making. There's a depth to Judaism that you start seeing where, for me, one of my favorite jokes is, why did God create Mormons?
So that Christians would know how Jews felt.
Jews feel, right? So as a Christian, like, why don't knowledgeable Christians feel a draw towards Mormon? Because, like, you see how fake and how, like, superficial it is. Like, Christianity is just so much fuller, and like Joseph Smith just took things and he created this, and for me, like, when I hear Christians say, oh, like, Christianity is the fulfillment of Judaism, Father Stephen, sometimes when people ask him why he became Eastern Orthodox, he says he feels like Protestant Christianity is a turkey sandwich, whereas Eastern Orthodoxy is a full Thanksgiving dinner. That's how I feel about Judaism versus Christianity. I think, like, you're not even doing the turkey sandwich. Like, the Eucharist, you guys, you sit there and you have your wafer and your little cup of thing, and like yesterday at my rabbi's house, oh no, we had wine and we had bread and we had food and we were sitting around the table and we were singing, and like, it was real. It's like it's a pretend meal. Like, you're not actually in communion.
I think that's a bold claim that you'd have trouble backing up if I pressed you on it. I understand the spirit of that claim, to not be actually in communion.
So when I went to Lord of Spirits convention in Antiochian Village, I actually made kiddush for Father Stephen, and I tried to bring as much of it. Like I got some gefilte fish, some crane, some challahs, some wine, and a handle of vodka. Right? And we sat around and I made kiddush and we ate and we drank and we sang and we talked, right? Like, and some Christians will do that, right? And frankly, there are plenty of Reform and conservative synagogues and even modern Orthodox synagogues which have kiddush, which reminds me a lot more of that, but like when you're sitting and like, I mean, I hear you. Pretty mistaken view of what the Eucharist is, to be honest. And yes, Christians eat and drink together. Like, I don't think it's the same thing as making kiddush and having a seuda. Like, and frankly, I think some small portion of Christians will in fact have communion when it's not the Eucharist. But like, yeah, I don't think it's generally an actual meal like a seuda is.
I mean, what Christian denomination would you say comes closest to having a Suda?
I think it depends on actual congregations and actual families. I think there are individual families, individual Catholic families who would never call it the Eucharist, right? Who actually, and probably churches who actually have a communion meal, but they don't associate it with the Eucharist. Same thing. Like I think there are definitely Protestants who do. They're like, oh, we're Acts. I don't know, whatever, Acts 1, Acts 2, Acts whatever church, right? Everybody has. I haven't seen an Acts 15 church yet. I look forward to an Acts 15 church, but like they're like, yeah, we actually, the Lord's meat is, and I'm sure there are people who do it, but like it's not a thing the way in an Orthodox family, like Friday night is Friday night. That if you go to a Chabad house, you get to see what a Friday night kiddush is really like.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say the communal aspect of Judaism is very important. I just, I mean, I don't have as much exposure to Christianity as some people, so I can't speak for what's not. But well, I do think a lot of Christians do go to church for community. So
Community, definitely. Look, I don't mean to be dismissive of Christianity, but like, and certainly there are Christian communities which function better in many ways. Like, this is another thing I like to say: wherever you go, you will find that all of the people there are human beings. Wherever you go, you will find, to your eternal disappointment, that all of the people there are human beings. But Judaism itself, as it is structured, I believe is the fullness of the light, whereas Christianity is viewing Judaism through a glass darkly. And obviously, I'm Jewish.
well, yeah, but I mean, let me ask you this: do you think would you rather somebody be in a Reform or conservative shul or a Protestant or Catholic or Orthodox church?
Oh, definitely. I mean, a believing Christian church. I have said many times, I think Andrew Clavin and Michael Brown and several people who have converted from Reform and conservative Judaism to Christianity have moved closer to like actually a God, like believing in God thing. But like believing in God is fundamental, whereas too many people, and even in some Orthodox synagogues, like there are people who just think of it as a cultural thing, and God isn't the most
It's
important
the
part of it
Barbara
for them.
Streisand, Leonard Cohen, Adam Sandler, American-esque,
Well,
like lox and bagels Judaism.
actually, Leonard Cohen, I think, took it a lot more seriously than you're portraying it. But like,
I know. I just use him as an example. I don't mean like the
no,
individuals.
I hear. Right. There is a cultural, like, if it's not about God, if it's just cultural, it's just cultural. What can I say?
I know, but what I mean about this is I think there's three levels here of abstraction you can look at it. I think there's a level of abstraction you can look at is the ideal, the practical, and then the not ideal and not practical. The ideal is God, and I wish all Jews would be Orthodox Jews, and whether they're Zionists or not, I want them praying. Okay. The second level of abstraction is practically, would I prefer a Jew who's like, I support Israel, I want to stand up against anti-Semitism, I like lox and bagels, I like Barbra Streisand music. Would I prefer that to a completely assimilated Jew who's like posting BDS on Twitter? Yeah, I definitely would prefer the North American cultural Jew to a completely assimilated leftist Jew. But and then there's like the completely leftist, completely assimilated Jew is like the lowest level of like, yeah, they're so off that yeah. But
Well,
like yeah.
ultimately, if you believe in a living God, each person's relationship with God may look very different, and there are definitely people who are not Orthodox Jews, right? Who have a better and more spiritual relationship with the actual living God than I think there are Hindus, right? Who have a real relationship with the living God in a much more correct, full way than many people who are living in a Hasidic community, completely observant of halacha, etc., but are just holding up appearances and have no relationship with God whatsoever. But that's not something we can judge. That's what Deuteronomy 29:29 is about.
What does it say?
The secret things belong to the Lord our God. Okay, my dog wants me to take her for a walk, so I do have to go because she gets a walk when she wants to. But it was very nice talking to you, Ethan. It was very nice
You as
talking
well.
to you, Kirk, as well, and everyone else. I am going to end this stream because I have to take Happy for a walk. Later.